Hello and welcome to the Unofficial Controller Podcast, your weekly gaming podcast, episode 152. Getting ready for the Hogwarts Legacy. With me, George, and as always this week joined by Seb, Expelliarmus to my simply expelled. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. What about yourself?
Do you know what? Life is good. Life is good. Now, before the show slips away from us, Odders, wherever you are, grip that wheel as I ask Seb, what have you been playing?
Man, I have been playing a couple of really good games lately. One in particular is Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush, came on Game Pass. It was announced during the Xbox developer show that happened about a week and a half ago at this point of recording. But like, really good game. It's a kind of like a mixture between Kingdom Hearts, Guitar Hero, and Devil May Cry, and it has some really cool vibes. I like the art style. It kind of reminds me of like a Saturday morning cartoon splash with a splash of like anime, thrown onto it. So
may I interject?
Really vibing it. But go ahead.
Of all the games to ever nail, a lot of games, oh yeah, we look like a cartoon. They slap a cell shaded sort of edge around it, but this game in particular looks like an actual cartoon. The way it really moves through 3D space on the character, the zooms, everything about it is in its execution of its presentation is flawless.
It really is. And I think what really surprises me about this is like the studio that did it. This is made by Tango Gameworks, and that's a studio that's known for its horror. And so this is like quite a stark difference from what we've seen from that studio beforehand. But I'm loving it. I think this is not necessarily the step forward we've been waiting for with Xbox, but I do think this is a good indication of like, hey, we can get different, smaller titles on this and really just add to the portfolio that Xbox is lacking lately,
Yeah. Oh, and I think as a game to do that, this is perfect for that. I think it kind of hits some of the places where something like Sunset Overdrive didn't really hit. This actually hits and delivers on them all. And I think for that reason, I think it's an absolutely stellar piece of work.
Yeah. It does have like you said, it does have some vibes of Sunset Overdrive and Jet Set Radio, and I really enjoyed both of those games, but they didn't quite hit some of the highs that I wanted. And I feel like this game kind of like nails some of that, even though I'm like, some of the rhythm stuff kind of feels off in like portions here and there, but like for the most part, I think they absolutely nail everything they're setting out to do here.
What's the other game then? If that's one of the games, what's the other game?
Man, the other game, I challenged myself because like I had a hot take on the Single Player Experience podcast about like, is Ubisoft just not S tier or A tier? So I challenged myself and I went back and I was playing through like the last 3 years of Ubisoft release games. And so lately I've been playing through Far Cry 5 and 6, and then I've played through Watchdog Legion, and I was just trying to see, I was like trying to get a good picture in my head. I'm like, where does Ubisoft fit in the overall portfolio of video game studios? And, so I was kind of just doing a research project just for my own benefit. And I really like some things that they put out. But for the most part, I'm feeling sort of, how do I put it? As polite as I can be, it doesn't necessarily feel premium, if that makes sense. It feels like it's just the run of the mill kind of games that just feel like checkmark games.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. They don't make a bad game. Thing is, if you're only in the Ubisoft ecosystem, your variation, your understanding of quality. Let's say you've got a console at home and you play a little sports game on it every now and then you basically dip into the Ubisoft games. For whatever reason, you've always been a Far Cry fan. You've always been there's lots of people out there that fit within that. If you're only in their genre, their weaker games feel okay, but when they nail it right, you feel like you're playing one of the best games you've ever played. But at that moment, but I think the games don't really stand up very well to a retrospective revisit. I've talked about this on the show many times. I went back probably a couple of years ago now and went through every Assassin's Creed up until I just couldn't stand it anymore. And there were some, within that, I had some really fantastic experiences. And within that, I also had some really god-awful experiences. But once I was locked in that Ubisoft ecosystem, my understanding of variation degrees of quality and not got blurred because all I could compare it to was the last one.
Yeah, and I feel like it's sort of I've done a disservice to like all the Ubisoft games because I've just like played Horizon Forbidden West, which I think is like the best Ubisoft-esque kind of game that you can possibly play on the market right now, to where, hey, you see something in the distance, you see all these markers on your map, like go tackle anything and everything that you want to. And I feel like that game does it so much better than Far Cry, so much better than Watch Dogs Legion, so much better than the Assassin's Creed RPG games. And like I hate to bag on them because I know they're going through a rough time, but like none of this feels premium. It just feels like these should be like $20 games that anyone could just jump on and just have as good a time as they want to, but they don't feel like they're the creme de la creme of video games anymore.
I feel like we talked about this a couple of episodes ago, or when we were all last on, and I feel like they've hit this point. I don't know, where they're just kind of scraping through on these games that are just okay. They kind of every now and then they retreat to the cave and they have a reassessment of what they do, and then they bring out something. So they went to the cave and had a reassessment of what they do, and they came out with Assassin's Creed 3. I personally think that game is probably one of the strongest Assassin's Creeds, but for a lot of people, they didn't really like it. So they went away and come back with 4. Amazing, great, everybody wants this. So then they went away and came back with an even more sort of outlined version of that in Assassin's Creed Origins. And then they basically stomped that mud hole dry. And I feel like they go away, they redesign, they come back. That game sort of reaches average expectation, which to them is a pass. And then they stomp that mud hole dry until literally the industry sicks out their next effort. And then they go back again and come forward with something else. Outlying outstanding games like Beyond Good and Evil 2 or whatever it's called, and Skull and Bones at rest here.
Skull and Bones.
Skull and Bones was a good idea in 2013. It's a really awful one 10 years later. And Beyond Good and Evil, that game should have come out in 2006. It should not be a game that's coming out now. It was such a niche game that reviewed well that no one ever bought. To think that you're going to bring out another one and it do well, I don't know I don't really understand what they're thinking at the moment.
I don't either, but like I equate like Ubisoft right now to Fast and Furious. If like Ubisoft was like a movie franchise, I feel like it'd be Fast and Furious, to where like you don't necessarily if they don't have that high quality that you'd see in some other movie franchises right now. They're just kind of putting out run of the mill like entries and installments, and really you just want something different and fresh, and maybe even something just even on a smaller scale where like you don't have to go to space, you don't have to like take on these giant submarines. I just want a very niche experience and to learn about like these very centralized characters in a small, like isolated place. That would be magnificent. But no, like Fast and Furious has given us everything and anything like they could throw at us right now. And I feel like Ubisoft is kind of the same way.
Do you think that with Assassin's Creed Mirage, they're going to bring that ship back on course, or do you think that's going to be another basically disaster zone?
I think, they have several different Assassin's Creed coming out, one in the RPG space, one Mirage being more like niche. And I feel like people are going to give that a shot, but I also feel like there's that audience there for Assassin's Creed isn't going to be as strong as it once was. I feel like there's a certain point to where you have to kind of reset everything and maybe give IPs a break a little bit, or maybe even just, come up with some new concepts to where you could revitalize the franchise again if you want.
Think how much money they've got, where they could take a few of their top guys, they could put them on a plane to the middle of nowhere. They could say, use as much budget within reason as you can. Blue sky thinking this, buy yourself some whiteboards and some dry white marker pens, make a load of mood boards, come back at me with what you think our next big franchise should be. But my nervousness about the industry and some of these big hitting studios, EA or Ubisoft or whatever, They only ever bank these days on safe bets.
The crazy thing is we just mentioned Hi-Fi Rush and like that's a Tango Studios game, but they're owned by Bethesda. And I like it almost feels like they took your suggestion there of like, hey,
Oh,
start making some like very niche things of like, hey, do whatever you feel like doing that you feel like would be very different, that you feel like would be still a premium experience, but different than what we've seen
I
from
was
like
going to suggest to you that was their palate cleanser game
yeah.
when you started talking, but I didn't get the opportunity. But that's exactly how. And look what that has done for them.
Mm-hmm. Completely changed everything up. And now like people see Bethesda and Tango Works as completely different than what we saw them before. Of like, I almost would rather see more of their studios put out like these smaller niche titles than have them put out like these big mega titles that only like maybe 50% of their audience is actually going to really hit with, or maybe like some people are going to be like, hey, I don't necessarily want to play another Skyrim esque kind of game. Give
It's
me
just the
something a little different.
incubation of a Skyrim esque game
Mm-hmm.
that's going to have to be modeled to an 8K standard is going to be that long. But by the time it comes out as an employee, no matter how excited you were 4 years ago, you're done with it now.
Oh, absolutely.
And once the DLC and the, bug fixes have taken place, you're kind of stumbling out of a decade of your life pretty much to then get dragged by the neck and thrown straight back in to draw in a mud crab again. I can't imagine anything more, when you get into art or something like that, you get into it because it allows you to express yourself. So you go to college and you go to school, you go to college, you go to university, you do all this fine art, you do all this drawing, you learn about the history of drawing, you find your style, you do all this. And then you go to a video games company because you're interested in that and you find that you want to develop yourself through video gaming. And someone basically sits you down with some crayons and says, okay, this is coloring by numbers. Yeah, but I want to, no, that doesn't happen here, pal. You're drawing this Daedric armor exactly the way we tell you to do it, and you're going to color it in exactly. How is that good for them? Like they can do their best interpretation of some Daedric armor, but it's only going to be what they get told to draw. So
Yeah.
unless they're doing that sort of whole concept drawing phase at the start of a project, which is probably quite exciting, after that, they're basically dropping textures on a mud crab for 6 years. I can't really imagine anything worse.
Yeah. To your point though, we have seen quite a few newer studios being founded on that sort of principle of like people wanting to try new things, people wanting to spread their wings out and fly, so to speak. And I think like that's good for the industry and good for the people in the industry as well. That like so many smaller studios and maybe not even necessarily indie studios, but like mega funded like smaller studios are being founded right now to where you can see some creativity being like put into games like this.
Is it wrong that the thought crossed my head then that you were talking about these small studios and the one thing that popped into my head, I really hope they don't have a successful game because as good as that is for them, that means that's all they're going to be making for the next 20 years.
I think there's pros and cons of that. It's like if you have a successful game, that means you have an IP and that IP is worth something. So you obviously want to capitalize on that sequel. But like there are some studios that really just don't like sequels where they like, hey, I'm just going to focus on my next title. I'm going to take the lessons of my next title and put it into my new game, so to speak. So if you're an independent studio, you kind of have to take what you kind of like you kind of have to decide your own fate there. Like if you're looking at like for instance like Hades was that studio's probably first sequel was with Hades 2 coming out, but for the most part Supergiant Games were always making like very original unique games outside of Hades and Hades 2 now coming out.
I don't feel like we needed a controversial take as
Mm-hmm.
I'm known for, but I don't really feel like we needed a Hades 2. I agree that they should have taken everything they've learned from that and make a game that's a spiritual successor to Hades to Hades, but called something completely different. Because now they've put themselves in a corner. Because there's going to be people that think Hades is one of the best games I've ever played, and probably they're not wrong. But now that company's on a train making two, and if two's successful, I feel really, really sorry for them because they're going to have to make Hades 3. And then where does that stop? Because then you hit that sort of that crossover point of I'm not into this anymore, but it's still singing gangbuster numbers, and the review score keeps dropping every single iteration we do. At what point do we say enough before we bring out a game that everyone's going to pan and the love for the franchise originally is in the bin and we've killed it? We've flogged what's known in the industry as a dead horse here, Seb.
Yeah, like Supergiant Games, using them as an example here, like it's up to their heads and the heads of the studio to whether or not you really want to capitalize on that Hades 3 momentum if Hades 2 comes out to be like a critical and financial success. But like they could go back to doing something like a Pyre, something like a Bastion, something like a Transistor, to where like, hey, this is completely different than what we did before. Like, we're not doing Hades anymore.
That's not happening. I don't care
so?
how stiff your head is in the boardroom there. Even a statue's head's going to get turned if I waft enough $1 million notes under it.
That's true. But at that point, I think like if they get big enough to where they can also start doing multiple games at a time at that point, to where like, hey, that team is just not necessarily just the only focus on Hades. Like, you can also see them put out a smaller scale game like a Bastion, so to speak,
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you like video games, podcasts, and reminiscing? I'm actor, video game writer, and total sweetie pie Connor Savage McCabe, and on each episode of Call Me By Your Game, I sit down with a guest for an intimate look at a special game from their past. Did you and your dad beat Spyro the Dragon over the holidays? Or was Halo 4 the one thing that united your roommates during your senior year of college? Stories like these are what Call Me By Your Game is about. From video game content creator Janet Garcia to Hades voice actor Courtney Vinay's, I interview wonderful comedians and game industry friends about these memories. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe someday you'll call me by your game.
As I said to you off air, sometimes butter gets spread that thin at that point. It doesn't even taste like butter on bread anymore. It just tastes like bread. And I wouldn't want them to start shoveling bread out because they think it's going to pay. At the minute, what separates them, the wheat from the chaff, is it's just that high quality of kinetic control feeling. Like Bastion was interesting because it wove the narration into the core element of the game, which felt really new and fresh at the time. And to this point with Hades, where it's that culmination of everything that they've learned along the way, the narration, the audio, the gameplay, the connectivity of the controls, it all just worked.
It does. That's sort of what makes life interesting, is like, these guys, the top of Supergiant Studios, like, have choices they have to make. And I'm like, do you go for the money, and has the money spoken too loudly to where you can't resist but to put out like several sequels? Or do you still have that kind of like drive to want to create something new? Or is there any wiggle room around that? It's, life's about choices, and sometimes you have to make a hard one, or sometimes you have to kind of go with what you feel inside. So it's so interesting, and I wonder what that studio will do in the future. But I hope Hades 2 is just so successful and does game busters and really just capitalizes on the momentum of the first one. But if that game doesn't, if it's just more of the same, it's still a lesson learned, I guess. And then maybe they can take it on the chin and go with whatever they want to do with next. So
Bastion 2.
A Bastion too. Like, the funny thing is, we were talking about sequel-itis, and I'd absolutely lose my snuff to actually get like a Bastion 2. Like, I'd love to see what that looked like, or a spiritual successor, even
in a way it was Hades, but it is what it is. Is that all you've been playing this week?
I mean, yeah, I've mostly been playing those, and out of all those, I can say like I've been having more fun with Hi-Fi Rush than any Ubisoft game, sadly.
Oh, absolutely.
What have you been playing, George?
This week, this past couple of weeks, I've been playing some Death Stranding Director's Cut. Mm-hmm. What an I've always loved the game, and the Director's Cut there's nothing really in it so far that's made me think, oh, I don't remember this, apart from obviously the Monster Energy drink change into Bridge Energy or whatever it's called now. But yeah, that game is still wonderful. I'm enjoying it this time round just as much as the first time round. The story's just as compelling. It's just as weird. The rather mundane action of carrying parcels from one place to the next has always resonated with me. I'm obviously a frustrated postman or courier of some kind. But yeah, I'm enjoying that. I'm taking my time and I'm 5-starring each place that I get to and really maxing it out and enjoying the experience and seeing as much of it as I can. I've also been playing. We're obviously all between games at this point, but I've also been playing the Mass Effect Remastered trilogy. Mass Effect 1, one of my all-time favorites.
Didn't
I
age
like
well.
it. The thing about it hasn't aged well from a graphical point of view. I'll give you that. Even with the stunning 4K visuals it says on the box, Mass Effect 1 does not really look stunning at all. But the thing is, Mass Effect 1 has the rhythm and flow of their older works, like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. The runaway success of Mass Effect turned Mass Effect 2 and 3 into basically Gears of War. And I don't feel that's necessarily in its wheelhouse from my point of view. Like Mass Effect 1 for me resonates big time. I like the dice rolly element in the background of the original game's combat. It felt more to me like a Dungeons and Dragons with a sci-fi skin on it. Mass Effect 2 feels like like a cover-based shooter. And although that continues the story, and to a lot of gamers, they think, oh, wow, this is what I wanted 1 to be. I actually was happy with the way 1 worked. It wasn't offensive to me. I turned up for the story, not for the gunplay. So then 2 is all about the gunplay. And I feel I spend more time blind firing from a piece of concrete than I actually do wondering what the next twist in the story is going to be. Now, that's just me and the way I play things. But for me, that didn't jive very well. I'm going to play through them all probably here as it is. Just for your reference, played a little bit more Man-Eater, only a very small amount. Like, I find that game propelled you on a trajectory to start with. You're strapped in. You're like, my goodness gracious me, we're going to get to Alpha Centauri at this rate. And then a few more of the watered areas opens up and the engine just pitters out.
Mm-hmm.
And the craft turns to the ground and starts plummeting. And there's not that much in there, which is really sad because I like the component parts, the documentary style, narration, the way that's done tongue-in-cheek, that's also sort of throwing shade on a lot of TV documentaries that you find these days. They're very sort of dumb stuff. It's like gold mining, which I like. Don't hate me for that, but
very satirical.
It is, but on a point that not probably many people would get, but I certainly, as soon as this mini documentary started in the loadout, I was like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I actually I've seen a lot of these documentaries, and you obviously have as well, to have made this game. So you've absolutely nailed that there. A little bit more Chase the Horizon. That's always on the hard drive. That's always getting played. Even though I've platinumed it, I'm still playing F1 Manager. Although I have to say, I know.
Why, George? Why are you still playing this game?
Because I went through and I had 3 successful seasons with Ferrari, one of the top tier teams. Okay, the lower of the top tier teams at the time of when the game is set, within reason. And I had 3 seasons. The first season was hard to win. The second season was easy. The third season was a cakewalk. And I thought, if it's been this easy, maybe I should play it so I've platinumed it. And now I'm going to go and play as the bottom team, or one of the very bottom teams, Williams. What a different game it is when you're not winning, Seb. That's all I'll say. When you're trying to take someone from the bottom and you're fighting when you know that you're going into a race in the highest position you can come out with, even with a backwind in your favour, is 17th. Yeah, that's a bit demoralising. When I bring an upgrade to the car and it literally gets me 0.0001 mile an hour faster, and nothing else really on the car changes, 2 races in, I'm done.
I imagine.
I went back to Little Big Workshop, though.
It's just the game that keeps giving for you, isn't it?
It is. Got another trophy out of it this week, so I've literally got 2 to do. I need to get my factory to level 40, which now I'm not focused on the primary special jobs for people. I can literally just take on every job in the game and let it work it out and leave it running in the background. That's getting platinum, baby. All right, that's getting platinumed. The only other thing I need to do is start a new game, find Lazy Pete, and skip the tutorial. One would imagine that's pretty easy done.
Lazy Pete sounds like a shifty kind of guy.
I think he's definitely from the Ray family tree. Apparently, a little house, if you don't expand too soon in the game, a little house gets built, and in it is Shifty Pete, Shady Pete, call him what you like. He's obviously a Naderwell. And if you look through the window, 15 minutes a day, Pete is actually doing something. The rest of the time's in his chair. You have to watch the house until you see him do something and then click on him. And it's like you've caught Shady Pete doing 15 minutes of work. That's it. For some reason, that's a trophy. I don't know why. Trying to think what else I've been playing. That might be about it. Oh, it's all about the director's cuts. I've also downloaded and started playing through the director's cut of Ghost of Tsushima. Now, the first time I played it, I played through with the Japanese voice artists, which, even though the lip sync didn't really work on the PS4 version, they've come up with all these different reasons. And the PS5 would have been the place to play the Japanese voice artist game because the lip syncing is now lip synced to the Japanese voice artist. I'm playing through it in reverse, classic George. I'm doing it the English voice artist way this time. I don't know why.
English is still really good, though. Really good on that.
As soon as it started, I knew that the voice acting was to a high standard. But that game now is intrinsically, because I played it a lot with the Kurosawa filter on, it's in my mind, it just sounds so much better in Japanese.
You know, I don't know. You're not an anime fan at all, are you?
When I was a teenager, I circled round it like most people do, but since then, I've not really been that into it.
Okay, so what you're experiencing right now is something us anime people like always experience. It's like when we hear like the dubbed and the subbed versions of different shows, like whenever the dubbed version is like, say, One Piece, whenever you hear them talk in English and then you go to the end and you spent like 200 episodes with hearing them talk in English and then you go to the sub version where they're now speaking in Japanese, it's like mind-boggling. It almost feels like a completely different show and you're kind of thrown off by it. You're experiencing the same thing in Ghost of Tsushima right now.
Yeah, also because it is a piece of Japanese history. It just felt like it was right. You know, if this is literally a computer game time machine into a different time and space, I'm not going to train the whole island of Tsushima just to speak English so I can have a good time. They're going to speak Japanese and I'm just going to have to like it or lump it.
Now, I understand. You want your stuff to be factually accurate.
Absolutely correct.
I get it, man. And sometimes you got to stand on your principles there.
No, don't say that because that I'll be walking through with a cleaver on most games. Like, no, that wouldn't happen like that. No, don't get me started on Assassin's Creed. There'd barely be a game left.
So, on the director's cut question, are you playing through the story or are you just playing through the Iki Island expansion?
I have a save on there and I was going to go in with the idea of playing the expansion. And then I thought, I actually need to brush up my skills so I can be good at this because I do believe Ishi Island or whatever it's called is quite. It's not something you should wander into straight away,
especially after you haven't played in a while.
Exactly. So I thought, I suppose what I should have done in retrospect is loaded up my save, gone to an area where I know I could clean house and relearn the controls. But I don't like that. I like to get drawn into the experience and it not be a game. Now this is from the heart. This is Seb. When I play a game, I don't want to feel like I'm playing a game. I want to feel like I'm living in that person's shoes. So whatever it takes to get me more into that ideal is better. If I pick up a save from a couple of years ago and I start playing a game, immediately, I know this sounds crazy, but the curtains have been pulled down. It's a game.
I get what you mean. I get
it's
what you mean.
It's a game to me now. And I don't think I'd enjoy Ishi Island anywhere near as much if it was like, just playing through, it's a game. I don't want to feel like that. I want to feel like I'm living in that time.
Yeah, versus like watching the intro cutscene of say Ghost of Tsushima for instance, so it gets you back into that mode. Like you really want to take on the villains there because like, hey, they've done you a great disservice. It gets you into that state of mind versus like just playing into like the intro of like a save file from like 2 to 3 years ago where you're just like, oh gosh, now I have to learn the controls again, and in that aspect kind of makes it a game, so to speak. It's a whole different vibe whenever you're going into like a new game plus, so to speak, versus like a old save file.
And I know this sounds crazy, but I want more games having me doing. Now, I've recently bought that Kingdom Come Deliverance, so I need to dedicate to it. And it should be right in my wheelhouse. It's like you get up, you have to wash, you have to do all this stuff which grounds you in the universe. But sometimes I don't know what it is. There's this fine line between game and simulation that I don't know. One day I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I want to wash all my clothes by hand in the game. I want to put them through the mangle. I want to dry them on the line. I want to scrub them on the washboard. I want to do all of that. And then some days I just want to like press click and all the washing be done. You know, I to make me happy in the game, it's going to be very difficult indeed. But yeah, so there's lots of things kicking around, and then obviously this show is all about getting ready for Hogwarts Legacy, and we'll get to that in a moment. It's just a little bit of fun for us. We're not gonna,
for sure.
There's no spoilers. We're just going to have a tongue in cheek what we're doing to get ready, and that might be not only clearing down our game library, but it might be buying a certain kind of suite in, or setting up the game room in a certain way. Whatever it takes to make us feel like we're walking down the cobbled stones of the Hogwarts Academy itself. But to that end, Seb, before we dive into the news, I'm going to switch things around a little bit. There's no RGT this week. He's taking a little bit of leave. And Bobby can't join us today. And if you want to jump on the Discord and wish him well, I advise you all to do that. But I look to you. I haven't come up with a theme tune for you yet. I've got a very special theme tune I'm going to rock out for RGT next week. And I've yet to come up with a theme tune for you, although I'm going to at some point in time. But until then, I'll ad-lib it. Seb's Indie Jam. Something fresh from the floor of his game jam. Seb's Indie Hits.
Da, da, da.
He's picked this because it's good and it's not a miss. It could have been a swear word, but we didn't go down that road. What put us out of our misery? Everyone's turned their car radios down, the headphones down. Like, George, what is it with this singing thing, mate? It's low rent and it makes the show look worse than it is.
All right, so Seb's indie gem for this week is going to Batoa Lost Haven. It is a game that is very much in that Diablo style where you're kind of playing almost that top down, but it's kind of like diagonal, like top down viewpoint.
Isometric, baby.
Yeah, for sure. And this game is all about like the yin and yang element. You're playing as a girl who's like face the apocalypse where half of the world is wiped out, and you and your friend are just trying to find some semblance of like, I guess you could say, supplies, so to speak. And then you kind of stumble across like these entities that give you the power of the sun and the moon. And the sun, it gives you these like a melee based powers to where you kind of like have a melee like move set that you're kind of fighting through. And then the moon gives you these like these distance based move sets that kind of like work in the moon's favor. But like what really is cool about this game, besides like the art style, because like the sun is really everything the sun gives you is basically lit up orange, and everything the moon gives you is like lit up purple. But like as you fight like the enemies change their basically like quote unquote like their moon enemies now, or like their sun enemies now, and you have to change on the fly of like which power base you're using. And
I like this. What was that game on Dreamcast? Was it Icaragua or something like that? Where you kind of, it was a bullet hell game where you could absorb white and then shoot black, but then there was times where you absorb black and shoot white. Are we talking the same thing? just so I can, in my mind, imagine it, is the moon and the sun in the level at the same time, or is it like a day and night cycle as well, which makes things even more difficult?
No. So like when you have like when you're playing, you are like an icon of the moon and the sun. So like you switch, like let's say you press the X button and you switch, that'll give you like now you're a moon based like avatar, and you can kind of use like all these moon based like skills that you've gotten, but all of them are like range based.
That's
And then
cool.
yeah, and then like say you have another enemy and you know it's weak to like physical attacks, so you switch back and now you're the sun, and you have like this really cool sword, and all like and the sword kind of gives you all these like melee based area attacks that you can kind of like wreck shop with. So it's kind of like that factor, but like they take that element to the next level by like introducing this morality system, that good and evil yin and yang like morality system.
Oh, really?
But in this game, instead of like you choosing between good and evil, it's just choice. So like every choice in this game has a consequence or it has a reward system. And you kind of have to just live with the choices of your actions. Like the sun is very much like, hey, like if you lean towards the sun's kind of like narrative base, that means like everything has a action and you're more aggressive, or maybe you might choose like, hey, this being costs like millions of people's lives in the balance, but like he's trying to atone for it now. Like the sun says no, I think you should kill him. The moon goddess basically says no, he's trying to atone, spare his life. And then what you do there has an impact on the story for millions of people there. Because like I should have explained this at the beginning, but like when you become a sun or a moon avatar, so to speak, you're basically like the Green Lantern of that universe now, where you are basically like the cop, so to speak, the Superman of that universe. And now it's up to you to kind of like picture in how are you going to like save this universe? Like, are you going to make the hard choices of like, hey, I can spare this person's life, and because this person is like single-handedly responsible for feeding an entire planet, or hey, this person accidentally caused like the genocide of another planet, I have to make him pay, but to actually make him pay, and that will kind of like give me other benefits later on in the future. You get what I mean?
That sounds awesome. So how much is that and what formats is it on?
That is on pretty much every single format you can think of. It is on the Switch, the PS5, the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. So it is usually around the $20 marker. Full disclosure, I got the code from the developer for review. You can read about it on the pronerdreport.com. But like, yeah, it's a game that I think it's I've never played a game where choices really matter to this extent, because like everything you do, like what, like you can save a life, you can spare a life, or like you can damn like a creature to like oblivion, or like you can save this creature, and that has like far-reaching consequences to this universe. Like everything means something in this game, and I think that that's one element I really think is important and we're missing in video games.
Boba Loba, if you're listening, we need a Seb's hidden gem area, like RGT's got. I don't know how to set this up, but so this is a call out. Help needed, sir, please. Because RGT's got his nice little collection and curated area where he puts his hidden gems up. We need an area for Seb to put his hidden gems up, because I like this element of the show. It gives me a little bit something to go and look at. You know, it gives me a little bit something to research. It gives me a game to go investigate, see if it's my cup of tea. And I like reading things on the Discord. These mini reviews, they're very pleasing to me. So thank you for that. I think it's time to rip into the news, to scour the very darkest regions of the internet to bring you the latest stories. First up, on the up and up, Sony is only just steadying the PS5 stock situation, so it would be incredibly buoyed by the brand's overall performance in the quarter ending 31st of December. In addition to shipping 7.1 million new-gen systems, the firm enjoyed an eye-watering 53.3% increase in revenue year over year, raking in a whopping 1,246.5 billion yen, which equates to $8.79. I'm joking, $8.79 billion in revenue. That's a record for the Japanese giant in the industry as a whole. The margin should perhaps be optimized further, but with the profits of 116.2 billion yen, aka 820 million, it's also set a new quarter three operating income record for the division. Sales were buoyed predominantly by an increase in hardware units, although once again, PS Store purchases like digital downloads, microtransactions continue to represent the bulk of PlayStation's business, accommodating for 51% of its income. In terms of install base, stock issues mean the PS5 is still lagging behind the PS4 at this point in its lifespan by around 5.6 million units, but Sony intends to ship a further 6.2 million new-gen consoles in the current quarter alone in order to meet its targets. This means the PS5 could very well be closing on the 40 million units shipped by the end of March. All in all, this paints a very pretty picture for PlayStation right now. The fact that it's performing so well, with stock only just recovering and PSVR 2 to launch, is a forewarning of how big 2023 could be for the manufacturer, assuming the PS5 hardware revision does launch later this year, as is rumoured. Expect it to set more records moving forward. Seb, of that news, the takeaway is the eye-boggling idea that they've done the biggest number ever in gaming, which I think I wouldn't even have thought. If you'd have pulled me out in the street and given me a litmus test and said, how well is Sony doing? I'd say probably not as good as the PS4 era, but apparently it is. By a long chalk. 2023, it's got the foreshadow of being a pretty solid year, but Forspoken slipped on a banana skin as it left the Sony studio mantra and ended up not being quite, well, we all kind of knew, but we didn't know. But it ended up being not what we mid. This is a new word in my vocabulary that you've brought to the show. Mid, a very Tom-like 6 out of 10 game for the long-term listeners. It's a shame because it looks cool as all beans. I've yet to play it, and I think eventually I will. This is probably going to be one of those games that I think is one of the best games ever made. But equally so, in the light of all that, and a slew of titles already scheduled to come out, either third party or own part, first party games, it could be good. I think PSVR 2 might be a bit of a struggle, if I'm being honest. Especially some of the sales markers. There was another news story out this week that said that they've had to sort of dumb their suggestions down, but then Sony themselves said, oh, that's just Bloomberg. They make stuff up. Don't listen to them. We're going to do that amount of units. How do you see 2023 shaping up for Sony, Seb?
They're going to do gangbusters. Like, they're going to do gangbusters. The gaming is, as a whole, is just on the up and up as far as like the money that these companies are getting out of this. I foresee them doing really good numbers this coming up year, especially considering like the availability of all these consoles. I recently, for the first time ever, went into a store nearby and actually seen a PS5 in a wild. And so I'm like, that to me says like, hey, the tide is turning. I've seen like a Xbox Series S and X in the wild for like 6 months, 7 months now. So I'm like,
let me give you a hot take here. I feel like the difficulty of getting hold of a PS5 created its own subgenre of appeal that has actually pushed PS5 further up the rankings than it should be if it had been able to have been got day and date at the store from launch. I actually think this sort of fractured release and install base actually creating sort of like
it's a demand. It really
almost creating like a must-have product though, because it was so rare. It almost added value to itself in a bizarre way that made it like that thing that was just outside of reach.
It's not bizarre. I mean, Nintendo's been doing this for almost 3 console generations now. If you look back with what the Wii was kind of that hard to get item for Nintendo,
and exactly so.
Yeah, and the Switch was the exact same way when it came out in 2017. But like, it's that sort of thing to where like that the fact that it's so hard to get kind of makes it more appealing. It's almost like the way people are like going crazy about Pokemon cards nowadays, to where like they're trying to find the rarest and rarest cards. That rarity makes it almost more desirable, so to speak. But like at certain points in a console's life cycle, you have to hit to that point to where like the rarity factor it just can't keep up. So you have to just release all these consoles and basically like keep the stock appropriately so everyone can get their hands on it. And then that's when you start to see the true numbers come in. And I think like over 2023 here, we're going to see like a lot of people who didn't necessarily have the console get their hands on it. And I think that's part of the reason why they're shutting down the PlayStation Plus collection giveaways that they've been doing, is because like they know a lot of people are a lot of people were reading that past that point because the stock was just going to be super high.
Thing is, I'm sure they've done an Excel spreadsheet somewhere versus people who've yet to pick one of these up, people who've never owned a PlayStation 4, and they can see some merit coming from walling that PlayStation Plus collection off, because they've milked that dry. There isn't really much to get from that. And how many incremental sales they're going to get, either digitally or physically, of those games that are on that are worth more than $2.99 secondhand physical, it is low. So yeah, I see why they're doing it. I don't understand why they're doing it, but I do understand why they're doing it. I think they should have just left that up at this point.
I think so too. At this point, like you're saying, there's not a whole lot of games there that are just like you got to play these games because you've never played them before. Most people who are investing their money into this big $500 investment have probably played a bulk majority of these games. There are maybe some exceptions here or there, but like I think a lot of this comes down to like some of the games were God of War and The Last of Us. Those are games that they're going to want to probably remaster and re-release in different forms. Like The Last of Us, we've already seen the part 1 be released, and I think
to that note, I remote play from a PS4 Pro quite a lot, and I've been playing Last of Us Remastered, the PS4, the first remaster, not the remake or any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fidelity is not as good, but that game still holds up.
Oh, really well. And I think that's an argument that I was going to make, is like that game holds up really well. That game still performs really well. Like you can like, what's to stop people from wanting to play that version over buying a $70 Last of Us Part 1 at that point?
Exactly. Yeah, there's not much. I think if you want to play, if you're new to the Last of Us brand and you're new to PlayStation, if you've watched the Last of Us TV show, like a very large demographic is starting to do, you're going to want to play that Part 1 version. You're going to want to play the PS5 version because, to be honest, it looks beautiful. Side by side, you'd know. If you've just picked up a console and you want to have a quick go on Last of Us, then, it doesn't hurt if you're playing the remastered version, to be honest with you. I still think the PS3 version, it leans into that console's way of the console's look. So like Uncharted 2 and 3 had a look to them that kind of
a grittiness to them.
But it sang from the processing power of the PS3 and what it did. It kind of had this look to it that just screamed PS3 game. And The Last of Us, again, was like a real high-end take on that same style. I do feel like some of that has been lost a little bit. We're talking on the Discord, someone said to me, I think Roast Space Monk said, "Oh, you haven't got Forza on your list." I thought you might have done. And it was fortuitous that very day I've been watching some Forza footage. And what I liked about it most was it looked amazing. It looked realistic, the shadows, the light penetration on the cars, the gameplay, the sounds, everything looked great. But what I liked about it, and I can't quite explain how or why, because they're drawing a realistic scan of a car, but it still looked and smelt like a Forza. It had that sheen to it that said, this is the Forza driving experience. You can make a car in Forza, you can get a car in Gran Turismo, and they pretty look the same, but you kind of know which is the Forza one and which is the Gran Turismo one, because it's still somehow
art style
to that art style. I don't know how you have an art style of a super realistic driving game, but they do. And I feel like maybe The Last of Us in that remake lost a little bit of that PS3 aesthetic, which I think to me was like one of the big things about it. But equally so, Part 2 looks incredible, and so does Part 1, and they ditched that and were able to make it so. But it still had those nods. I don't know. I don't know whether it's an artist in Naughty Dog or whether it's an idea that they chose to set either side of the game. It's like Red Dead Redemption. You kind of know it's a Rockstar game.
You do. It has like that sort of vibe to it, that sort of juice and energy around the art style that you know.
And the look to the characters' faces, that even though they've gone for a slightly more realistic style, still looked like someone who'd drawn Canis Canem Edit or Bully, still looked like someone who'd had a hand on San Andreas, still like someone who'd like helped design stuff for it. Just had that legacy of aesthetic to it, which I think was really good.
I understand what you mean, because like if you put like, say, we mentioned Ubisoft earlier, if you put like a Ubisoft Assassin's Creed character, a Rockstar designed character, and a Naughty Dog designed character, you would instantly be able to tell which studio belonged to which.
You absolutely would. Yeah, that's an intro. I think we've got slightly segued from the original point of the news.
Yeah,
that's the idea of conversation. Seb, slap me around the chops with this next bit of news. What you got there, friend?
all right, controlling the Empire the easy way. It's been a good few days for Xbox Game Pass, with the highlight arguably being the arrival of Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition on Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and S for the very first time. The reviews have been really good for this new console version of the strategy classic, and the Xbox boss, Big Phil Spencer himself, has thrown his support behind it as well, praising such a good job that the team did with the Xbox controls scheme. And Phil Spencer had this to say: had a great time playing co-op campaign Age on the console. The team did such a good job with the controls. Feels very familiar, but also very new. And the Age of Empires team kind of responded to that, saying, "How do you turn this thing on? The globally beloved and critically acclaimed Age of Empires 2, the Definitive Edition, is now available on Xbox consoles via Xbox Game Pass." So, as Phil Spencer mentioned, Age of Empires 2, the Definitive Edition, also has an online co-op support, and you can take advantage of crossplay with anyone playing on the PC version, Microsoft Store, or the Steam if you want to. Don't forget that if you don't like the idea of the Xbox control scheme, there's also the mouse and keyboard support on Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and S. So there's plenty of different ways to play this game.
Do you know what? This is what I wanted from Microsoft and Games Pass. They've gone and delved into the library of things that they've got. It got quite far back in time. You know, Age of Empires probably reached its zenith when people were playing it on early days PS2s, if you remember. It was a game that seemed to resonate and do well. And I think, again, there's something about that sort of grand strategy game, not only from a warfare side of things, but from developing your kingdom or your country or whatever and building that up. And we don't see enough games like that. And we certainly don't see enough games of high caliber quality like that. And Age of Empires has this resonance of quality about it. So why wouldn't you bring that out? Why wouldn't you make that control play scheme viable? Why wouldn't you also add the mouse and keyboard support? I think more of that, please, Phil. More of that, please.
I'm right there with you. I'm a big strategy person. Like, I spend a lot of time playing the Fire Emblem games. I play Civilization, both 5 and 6. Age of Empires, I dabbled in. I haven't quite dove into, but I'm a huge into strategy, like the strategy games in general. So I like this move. I love that they added basically controller support. I love that they kind of added a couple of different things. Well, because this is the Definitive Edition, I love how we got just enough to have that still same DNA of Age of Empires 2, but we got just enough to make it feel like a modern day experience. So kudos to Xbox for doing this. This feels like just another Xbox move that feels like it's just customer friendly and friendly decisions that Xbox has been doing lately.
Think it's historically friendly as well. And the only thing I can kind of align it to is the release of the flight simulator. I think that was, why wouldn't you release that on your console? It's been kicking around for years and it's never actually made it onto an Xbox console. It's kind of like these departments were existing in exclusion of each other when they should have been working in embrace of each other. The 360 could have had a flight sim and it would have done gangbusters numbers. So could the Xbox. Yeah, technically it got one in this, but and this Age of Empires. Let's dig into what's in the back catalogue. This. that's got so much love and it's not been seen for so long, this will do well. Off air, we talked about if they rested some of these franchises when they did actually bring it back and there was a teaser trailer, your eyes would literally pop out and stalks. You'd be like absolutely fired up for it. And I feel to me like Age of Empires has got that. But outside of the news article in this show and, the news being reported in some other places, a little bit of a soft launch, in my opinion, really.
Yeah, you almost argue that's been like the gaming sphere all encompassing because like Nintendo's relatively been quiet lately. I mean, they haven't put out like a 10 out of 10 banger, so to speak, either. I'm like PlayStation has put out games, but some of those have been third party. Some of those, even on the first party things, you're wondering on that first party narrative, like where are the PS5 games? Like this is still cross platform, so it's the gaming industry as a whole. But like on the sticking with Xbox though, this is a good move, and I like that they're basically creating like the PC Xbox and the regular Xbox having that perfect symmetry now to where like where your PC is basically your Xbox 2 at this point. Like it's just another Xbox in your house, and I love that. I think this is what you need to lean towards. Make more of your PC games like console friendly and vice versa. Just as long as you keep that up, everyone's going to be happy. At least with what you have in the catalog. We're always going to want more in that catalog, but we're gonna be happy with like the games you have in the catalog so far. You know what I mean?
Jump in the Discord and let us know a lost Microsoft Xbox franchise that you would love to see. And I want to see as many votes as possible for Blink's Time Sweeper. What an absolute...
Blink's is going to get curb stomped by Banjo-Kazooie.
Banjo-Kazooie has played the last note on that banjo. There's literally nothing left for him to give. It was a bizarre game when it came out on N64. They nearly killed it with nuts and bolts. Quite how it's even drawing breath right now, I don't know. What relevance that has in... like, oh my goodness gracious me.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I think like if they announced like a not necessarily remastered, but a rebuilt from the ground up Banjo-Kazooie game for like that Rare has done in Microsoft, I think people would just lose their minds for it. Especially,
I just don't think it would play very well.
Probably not. You'd have to redo those controls all over again. But like in the day and age to where we have Sackboy and we have like Ratchet and Clank, you need that on the Xbox side of things, and you have to take swings at it. I personally think, like I would prefer almost a new IP over either Banjo or Brink. So like I would just love for them to take a swing and make their own like new stamp on what their mascot would be. But like, they need one. That's a demographic they're really lacking, and Psychonauts is not going to cut it. I'm sorry. It's good game.
Esoteric.
Yeah, it's a good game, but it just doesn't have that appeal that a platform mascot needs to have.
I use Blinks as a bit of a tongue-in-cheek example because I see it a little bit like Sony's knack. It's it's just never going to wash. Next bit of news. That last fantasy won't be your last. Square Enix has had a solid run on Nintendo Switch over the past year of releases such as Live Alive, Nier Automata, Tactics Ogre Reborn, and more recently Crisis Core. But it seems it's not been enough. The Japanese developer and publisher has reported a drop in net sales in its latest financial results period up to the 31st of December 2022. Despite net sales falling to 255 billion yen, down by nearly 7% year on year, it's still got some big plans moving forward, teasing multiple new titles, including games featuring brand new IP. Some of the titles on the horizon include the Rhythm Final Bar Line and Octopath Traveler 2, which I don't know why I wanted to say Octopus Sensor, but I have absolutely no idea what possessed me, which are both due out later this year on the Nintendo Switch. Further down the line, the fans can look forward to a new Dragon Quest games and another major Final Fantasy entry. According to Square Enix, the sales decline is partly due to weakness in existing smart devices / PC browser titles. It goes on to mention how HD game sales did not reach the level of the previous years and notes how its MMOs did not receive any new expansion packs. New titles in the smart devices / PC browser category were unable to offset weak performance from existing titles. As a whole, Square Enix could do well with the Switch. I feel like it could lean into their back catalogue even more so because it's pick up and play. If they could take some of their older, bigger games and be able to make them a little bit more something you play while waiting for the bus, you can just sort of pause it, get on the bus, sit down, carry on playing. Some of these multi-mega hour games that would have been life sinks when they launched on something like the SNES, a la Live Alive, all of a sudden find a new home where they almost become digestible episodic content on the Switch, where you can break this game up into a million different slices. They don't have to work too hard to start bringing some of those over, like Tactics Ogre Reborn. From memory, that was a PSP game.
Yeah.
That really just fits that Switch. Now, it depends where the core demographic lies on Switch. Is it just kids playing Fortnite and then a couple of older man babies that should know better wanting to get their Mario fix, like you or I? Not that you're a man baby.
Google Gaga.
You're a man baby. Welcome to the creche. But you see where I'm going with this. Am I seeing the Switch as a portable device and then telling Square Enix to bring everything to it that ever could be a portable device? Or do we need Square Enix to be focusing on games that you sit down on the couch with? Because I find it hard to find games on the Switch that kind of tick both boxes. You can take it on the bus, but you don't feel you're missing out on the grandiose. Because when you take a game portable, Seb, to me, that game ends up getting done a little dirty. Because you're on the bus, let's say you hit an amazing cutscene in a game or a really intricate boss fight. It's interwoven in your consciousness through that lady a couple of seats down, coughing up blood into her tissue, to the kid swinging round on the pole and smacking his bag into the old lady. And you're like, should I say something that's not appropriate, or am I going to get his mother angry with me? Equally so, I'm trying to focus on the last level of this amazing game. And all I can hear is someone coughing up blood and a kid acting in a really unattractive way in a social environment. And what is portable gaming all about in your mind? And can you ever take a AAA experience on the bus and it still be something that you remember without that other real life nonsense in the way? Like, oh, is this my stop? No.
I mean, you can. I mean, we've seen it done with the Persona franchise before, where like the appeal of the Persona games are the stories, are the intimate relationships, and a lot of those were portable before. Persona 5 came out basically to anything and everything. But like you saw that with Persona 3 and Persona 4. But like I think the bigger story here, George, is like Square Enix on the Switch is like. You read that out, and I was sort of thinking to myself, I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, in the state of like where they were at in 2022, I'm like, this felt inevitable because, like, for one, the Switch isn't the only game in town. It's that Steam Deck, man. That Steam Deck has the juice right now. Like,
true.
People talk about the Steam Deck like they talked about the Switch in 2017, like in 2017. Like the Steam Deck is that guy right now. It's the king of the portable platforms because everyone can play anything and everything on it. Like,
but my only problem with the Steam Deck is how portable is it? Because even though it's alleged to be portable, if I'm going to take it on an 8-hour Trans-America trip, I'm going to need daddykins to fill the boot, not with luggage, but with lithium batteries.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The Steam Deck, to me, the Switch, let's put some historic connotations on it. The Switch is the Game Boy.
Mm-hmm.
It does what it does, and it does it well. The Game Gear is the Steam Deck. Oh, yeah. This bad boy's in colour, not just green screen. But to be honest, if you could get the Game Gear in the day with the batteries as they were to last any longer than your dad reversing off the drive before going on his journey without performing open heart surgery on the Game Gear and leaving in a couple more thousand AA's, the Steam Deck's an amazing bit of kit. I need someone to do a little bit more play testing on these battery length before I think, like, yeah, You can make anything, but if it doesn't last longer than 20 minutes, what's the point?
I'm gonna be honest with you. You remember when like in 2017 when the Switch first came out and people were complaining about like, hey, like the Switch is a great console, but like it barely lasts any time when you play like Breath of the Wild. Like it does well when you're playing smaller titles, but when you're playing these big beefy games, like it doesn't last very long. Like the Steam Deck has that kind of limitations to it, but it also has like settings that you can turn on to where you're like not running the game as labor intensive. Like as opposed to Breath of the Wild, like what you see is what you get. You had to play that version of Breath of the Wild on the Steam Deck. I can turn that bad boy to lesser settings and do like a battery saving option as opposed.
But then do you feel compromised when you get to the point in time where you've got it plugged into the wall and you can turn all the graphics up? You've been playing a flick book, and now all of a sudden you're playing a Disney cartoon.
I mean you're still playing with like a SSD though at that point, and I'm like and on that smaller screen, you're basically turning off what some of the graphic enhancements there, some of the ray tracing, so to speak. I'm like at that point, it's almost like like a lot of people will be able to tell the difference between the Xbox Series S and then the X gameplay wise, as far as like the visual aesthetics. But on that 7020 like P screen, on that little tiny screen, it really gets hard to tell the difference,
It's on a different note. Is ray tracing just, as we'd call it on the show, hyperbole? Because I was playing Maneater, and I went into the options and it said turn ray tracing on or off. I thought, wow. I didn't realize I've been playing with ray tracing on. This is going to now look amazing, okay? Versus the faked baked lighting. This is going to be how water looks in real life. This is going to be incredible. I turned it on, and then immediately went back and make sure I had turned it on because it looked worse than the fake baked in. When you do the fake baked in lighting, you can create an aesthetic that's boom. That's how I want that to look. When you do ray tracing, it's like, oh, that's how it look in real life, is it? It looks just like some muddy water. It's not that great.
I don't think that game does ray tracing justice either, though. I feel like ray tracing is better used in like an open world to where like you have different textures, have different colors, you have different environments that you work off of. As far as like there's a land to water ratio that really like makes ray tracing pop, and I don't think like Maneater does that a good service.
But does ray tracing pop enough while also being very CPU intensive?
I think that depends on the person. Like if you play like nowadays, if you play Cyberpunk on a solid PC and like have that ray tracing on, it looks like a magnificent experience, an absolute banger 10 out of 10 experience. That looks. I'll be real with you. Like having that on the ultra settings on PC with ray tracing on, it looks like the future of games. It legitimately looks that good. It looks like you remember the first time you played like Batman Arkham City back in the day and you thought like, oh my goodness, this is like revolutionary, It looks like that. Like it looks, and I haven't felt that way in a very long time because like games quite haven't hit that like next tier up in graphical enhancement in a while. And like that to me, like ray tracing could really make or break a video game in that aspect. But like we haven't quite seen the next step above like where we've been at graphically in the last 5 years or so. We haven't quite seen that next boost up.
No.
So I think there's
we have, but I think it's been in such
incremental
laminate layers that unless you take a time out to stand back and play a game from 2014 and today, your mind plays tricks on you. You think, no, this is no better. But then when you go back and experience an Xbox One, PlayStation 4 launch game, and then come and play end of the generation games or a crossover generation game, you're like, oh,
I can see the difference there. Yeah.
Now I know. Now I understand what's been going on and where the horsepower's been wasted because I can see it. But I think if you just play the games and you don't revisit them, that line is super blurred. And I think probably in a way I'm one of those rare gamers that will go back and play a game from 2014, no issues. But equally so, it's made me more appreciative lately, especially with the backlogs and everything that we've got, of like what modern games have achieved. When Ratchet launched on PS5, I was like, yeah, it's all right. It's okay.
Oh, it's amazing. That fur K.
Wow. But that 4K, as you say, when I loaded it up the other day and I was having a little tear around on it, I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't appreciate this at the time. But
Oh
this
no, it's
looks
gorgeous.
phenomenal. And in a way, probably better than Miles Morales in some ways.
Oh yeah, it looks like a Pixar movie. Like it legitimately looks that good.
Yeah, but we used to say that about the 2016 reboot of Ratchet and Clank or 2014 reboot, whenever it was. It looked, and you know what? If you fire that up now, it still looks fantastic.
Yeah, but not 4K though.
I don't know how much they're paying you, even at this point with a game a year old, to keep inserting that tagline. But you're doing it, and fair play.
I loved it. I love that little tagline. But to the credit of like that team though, Insomniac, like that the fur really did look good. Like the fur and like the environments, the fact that you can like the warp drive, so to speak, to where like the rifting apart really looked really good in that game. Like I don't think enough people give that game credit for how good it looked, but like I don't think it showed off the power of the PS5 by any means, but I think it felt like the first PS5 game that we've gotten,
Well, it technically was.
Yeah.
Solely on that machine. It felt like we'd had a long wait. I mean, we had Demon Souls, we had Returnal, and then we had Ratchet and Clank, and that was like the mainstream game that maybe should have got more traction than it did. But I think having it in your library for PS5 at that time was still quite a hard thing to get hold of. And I think more mature gamers were getting it. So maybe Ratchet and Clank didn't quite get the gravitas it required. But having it in your portfolio as the console reaches mass market penetration, I think it will do it well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's almost like Astrobot. Like Astrobot didn't get enough credit at launch for how good that game actually is either.
It's still, I was playing it in an airport in Paris. They had this big PS5 interactive area, and Astrobot was like the standout game, really. It was easy to pick up. It looks fantastic. It played well. It shows off the controller nicely. And as an ode to PlayStation history, it was really well executed. It was a classy bit of kit, to be honest. Talking of classy bits of kit, Seb, you're a classy bit of kit. Why don't you squeeze out this last bit of news for us?
Okay, one last thing before we move on to the next story. Like, another reason like Square's sales might be down is they're putting out so many games that are the exact same game, basically the exact same. They're putting out JRPGs like crazy at this point, like smaller scale JRPGs. I'm like, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think maybe my complaints at the start, why aren't they banging out these games and making them easy on the Switch and pick up and play? I actually think they've been trying that.
Yeah.
In light of your comment, looking at it from that point of view, they have been doing that. Obviously, that my idea doesn't really generate that many sales. So sack me, Square Enix, because I'm absolute garbage. I know nothing about games, and all my ideas are complete drivel. And bring us something new for the Switch. Do you think that would help them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because like, look at just how many of these games feel the same, even though they're not the same game. There are so many JRPGs or like smaller scale RPGs on this thing that you sort of like get lost in the shuffle. I mean, at this point, you're competing against yourself. There's a reason why like a PlayStation, so to speak, like doesn't normally put out a AAA game like right up next to another AAA game. Like you want to like spread out the market. You want to like spread out the juice, so to speak, and like let people have time to sit on these things. And these games aren't necessarily small experiences either. I'm like Harvestella was another game like Square put out, and RGC's been playing that for like a year and a half now at this point. You get what I mean? Like
he's squeezed a couple 100 hours out of that bad boy. Or 100 hours, wasn't it, out of that? So,
Yeah, I'm like, even him who's like the prime demographic for this type of game, he's so fixed on this one game, he hasn't had time to play like Tactics Ogre or Live Alive. I'm like, you only have so many hours to game. Don't like muddy the waters by putting yourself up against yourself. You know what I mean?
So, agreed.
Moving on to the next story, though. This is like a good like transition here. Platinum that Switch. One of the standout developers throughout the lifespan of the Nintendo Switch has been Platinum Games. Not only has it delivered some amazing games like Bayonetta 3 and Astro Chain, but it's also released a number of past hits on the popular hybrid system, including the wonderful 101 and more recently, Nier Automata. If you're wondering what it's been up to in the new year, it seems like they're preparing to celebrate the anniversary of its 2013 action adventure hack and slash Metal Gear Rising on February 21st. It has now been a decade since the game made its debut on PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance 10th anniversary event notice. On February 21st, 2023, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance will celebrate its 10th anniversary since its release on the day of the event. We will unveil the Metal Gear Rising anniversary art on the Platinum Games official Twitter to commemorate the 10th anniversary, so don't miss it. As noted in the Google translation above, Platinum asks fans to not miss the event where it would be sharing some of its commemorative artwork. Despite the slightly underwhelming teaser, it's been seemingly been enough to get Metal Gear fans on social media excited, with some even hoping for a possible game announcement. According to this, Quentin Flynn, the voice actor of the main character, Raiden, has been teasing announcements for the upcoming weeks, one of which has been confirmed as the appearance of an autograph stream. Apart from this, he's been retweeting the game's anniversary each day in the lead up, thanks PC Gamer, by the way. The last 3D Metal Gear game to grace the Nintendo system was back during the 3DS generation with the release of Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater 3D. In somewhat related news, there's also been rumors in recent times about possible remasters. And I said that's a good transition because this seems like Platinum's doing the thing that Square should be doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel about this, George?
I agree. It feels like they've both been pushing down two separate routes. Square Enix have gone into their, for want of a better word, they've gone into their portfolio and said, what can we quickly chip out that's going to get some revenue? And they bang those out. I mean, low cost, really minimal risk to rework something. It's going to be a small team, going to rework some bits on Unity probably and get these things up and running nice and simple, quick and easy. Platinum, they've been doing that, but then have also been bringing us things like Astral Chain. I think looks great, and Bayonetta 3 is always going to do well. So the fact that they're going to potentially end that streak by bringing Metal Gear Rising, which is a little bit of a lost game during the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, but it's not a bad game. And if you feel like you've built up enough fans of your style of game, and that certainly is a Platinum style of game, where you could also get some good feeling from the Metal Gear fans who may have missed it, because it's definitely not a traditional Metal Gear game. I think it is a good idea. I think if you're going to do it, go all in and commit to it. Also, Snake Eater 3D. I can't see Snake Eater 3D coming out on the Switch, but I can see Snake Eater 3 redo. But at that point, we've had Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, the vanilla version. We've had Subsistence. We've had 3D. I would have expected that to have come out. Or maybe we just... Is it even relevant at this point in time? And going back to Platinum Games, Metal Gear Rising, is it a good idea? I think it could be. I just don't know if there's enough fan goodwill for that to actually hit like something like Astral Chain has hit. Is there enough fan goodwill in that game for it to hit like Bayonetta 3 would hit? I don't really know. So they have been doing their own thing, and Square Enix have been making the mistakes. But is this about to mark a transition where Square Enix start doubling down on some unique IPs and doing it the Platinum Games way, and Platinum Games are just about to start doing it the Square Enix way and banging out games that people don't really give a rat's ass about? I feel like they've both learned from each other, but the wrong things, and now they're about to make the same mistakes. I don't know. it'll be interesting to see. I'm kind of intrigued that Nintendo systems at the moment seem to be getting the Metal Gear love. I'm just surprised that the software houses involved haven't been creaming that off since the day Hideo left, if I'm being honest. But it's two different studios, and the news is a bit confused there at the end, but it kind of is all on point. But I think to your transition of the news between Platinum and Square Enix and what they're doing and vice versa, I think they're both on a precipice of either great things or disaster.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Like Square Enix is trying new things with Forspoken and like Final Fantasy 16, and they're trying their bigger things, but like I don't necessarily know if everything's going to hit for them this year. And then you also have Platinum, where like people also Bayonetta 3 didn't set the world on fire. Neither did Astral Chain. I'm like, neither one of those games set the world on fire, but at least they're trying new things. Maybe
I think Astral Chain, if that made its way onto another platform, I don't care. I think it would start to get the respect it deserves. I think kind of locked away on the Switch, it was never really talked about that much. And actually, a really cool experience, a really nice game, and a new universe, a great IP. It was executed in a good way. If that got like a Persona, golden release on Xbox or PlayStation, I think it would just lift it up another tier. And I think that IP could actually start gathering a significant amount of weight.
I'm right there with you, but with the caveat of if you put this on a Game Pass, people are going to gravitate to it like never before. I don't necessarily know if people are going to, pay like a $60 price point for.
There's no way they could charge that for it.
No,
if they are going to bring it out as a boxed release or a digital release and they want to put it in the premium category, I think they're going to kill it. But I think if they launched it in the soft window of somewhere between $30 and $45, I think it would kind of work. If it was on Games Pass, I absolutely agree. It would allow you to sample and then say yay or nay, and then play it through in its entirety. I think, but it depends if they want to go down that route. If they do, great for recognition of the brand. Back to that same old story of will it actually produce revenue for them? I don't know. You kind of need people to buy it, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
To prove concept.
You really do. You really do. So, community corrections, George. What do you think? What we got today?
None. Flawless victory. As always, our knowledge is on point. But if you have heard us made a mistake and you want to put me right, because I literally know nothing about games, and you'd be right. We'd be well within your rights. If we've misspoke or we've said something or we've said something completely egregious, like Tactics Ogres was never on PSP, it was. But let's say I've made that faux pas. How would they get in touch and let me know that I don't know anything about Tactics Ogre?
Well, they could catch a pigeon and kind of like send it to you, very Hogwarts kind of style. But we don't. We don't know if there's a lot of owls over here in the state, so we have to use pigeons, so they can catch a pigeon and send it to you like that.
Wow.
But they can also, email you at the questions at the unofficialcontrollerpodcast.com, DM us on Instagram or Twitter. But more importantly, forget all that. They need to come to Discord and hit us up via Discord, and then they can just chat with you one-on-one. Mano y mano, and tell you right smack dab, hey George, that game was never on Switch. What have you been joshing us here?
And the answer to that question is I don't know, but I would love them to be here. We've tried the hard sell, we've tried the soft sell. I'm basically going to say to you now, this is a heartfelt plea from me. If you've been listening to the show this whole time and you haven't gone into the Discord, do me a personal favor and come join the family. Get involved in the community. Get your name on the tip of my tongue so it's one of the names I drop in the show. The only way that's going to happen is if you make yourself known to us on the Discord. And I want to get to know and love each and every one of you as much as I know and love each and every one of you that's in the Discord right now. It's at the point where we know each other's names, and that's good. And that's how I want it to stay for as long as possible. And I think if you're like, oh, I don't know what that app is, and I don't have it on my phone, and it all looks a bit complicated or whatever, just reach out to one of us, either on the email or whatever, and we'll talk you through it. It's not It's not difficult. If I've managed it, and trust me, if I've managed it, you can do it too. And we would love to have you there. One thing about this show is the community. It's its crowning jewel, but you all need the love and respect. And you'll find that right there on the Discord. So, this is the super soft sell. This is doing Georgie Boy a favor. This is a big ask. This is me cashing in a check of goodwill that's 152 episodes deep at this point. Please, come join us. We would love to have you there. And then I can thank you, mano a mano, for the support you've given us this whole time. And super appreciate you. Nay, you're just saying that's podcast of flam. He says this to everybody. But no, you, the person that's never messaged in, the person that's listened to every single episode, the you that's driving to work right now, I want you to know this. I love you. And I'm super grateful for you. On that note, you may notice at some point in time during this episode, an ad will be inserted. It's different every time. The ads are much like Ray. It's different to you and it's different to me. We've got ads in the show. And that's just something that's going to help us along the way. We're going to reinvest in the show, get better. We've got the OLL Gaming at the Norfolk Showground coming up in April. So we'd love to all be there. If you're thinking of coming along, if you've heard this for the first time, you're like, oh, I would love to go. Tickets are available. We're going to do a live recording. Get in the Discord, get to know the people. And then when you come along, you've got someone to meet at the burger wagon outside. You've got someone to meet at the bus stop before you go in. Heck, you might even be traveling down on the same train as somebody. Let's make the community big, but let's keep it small by knowing each other and supporting each other. And I don't see any better time to join than ahead of OLL, because if you wanted to be on the show, if you wanted to see how the show gets recorded, if you wanted to see the verbal car crash that's me getting my jaw locked in to the point where it works, OLL's the place for you. So lots of other people there as well. Kid Icarus is going to be there. Ashens is going to be there. Adam Coriolik's going to be there. People like Trista Bites are going to be there. The It's Much More are going to be there, which means that every single console from the dawn of man to the modern day is provided for you to play on. There's interactive bits. There's all the cool bits. There'll be cosplay. I might even cosplay as myself. Baseball cap. Maybe everyone should come cosplay as me. Baseball cap, random MLB jersey, or some checkered plaid, as I'm wearing right now. I look like an out-of-work logsman on the border of Canada, Northern America. That's how I feel. I've got this rigorous beard that needs shaving off. Let me know how you want to see me at OLL. Clothed, unclothed, bearded or not bearded. Seb, how would you like to? Seb, you're going to OLL, but through the mystery of magic and ability, you'll be joining us on stage there for the live recording. What are you going to wear?
Not really sure yet. Not really sure. I was thinking about what do I wear on stage, because I can go a number of different ways. I can go extravagant, maybe like a purple suit, that sort of thing, very top hat with a little feather on it. Or maybe I just go very simple, maybe I just, reenact the Nick and Mal from American Pie and just, come as I was born, just with the skin on my back and maybe a can of beans on my shoulders and just come start naked.
Emptied onto your shoulder, or an actual can of closed beans?
No, a can of clothes. I don't want the bacteria of the open beans.
I wanted you to come in. What is the state of Texas's national dress? Is it like a great big Stetson and some chaps, or what's the correct sort of? What's the national dress of the Texan state?
Texans are very much there's this thing called blue jeans, and we wear those very extensively, pretty much all the time. We wear blue jeans. And then the tops, it kind of depends. Right now we're in a freeze, and we're not used to any weather below 40 degrees over here. The world panics in Texas when it gets below that. But we're in a freeze right now to where we hit below 20s, and so we have snow, we have ice all over the place. So it's just nasty, absolutely nasty. And we're not used to that kind of weather over here. So we're hoodied up right now, sweatpants and hoodies right now. But usually you can find us in some jeans, some regular t-shirts, or maybe even some maybe even some flannel every now and then, and you know, every now and then you catch us in some boots every once in a while. That sort
Oh,
of thing.
wow. I want boots, flannel, and a Stetson, if I'm being absolutely brutally honest with you. Nothing else will do as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah. So it just kind of depends on the Texas vibe over here. We go as the weather goes.
Okay. Come April, what sort of weather you're expecting?
Oof. That's always like in Texas, it's always like either rainy, snowy, or for some reason just the sun is shining unbeatable heat on us. We can't make our minds up during the month of April.
So it could be anything from a hoodie to a set of Speedos.
Yeah. So I mean, legitimately in April time, like during the morning, you might dress up for like, hey, it's cold outside, and by the end of the day, you just have like pull off pants to where you have shorts underneath because like it's 82 degrees. In April, it's the Wild West of weather over here.
Wow. Okay. Well, I don't know how to link from that to this, but the title of the show was Getting Ready for Hogwarts Legacy. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek because we're all about SEO optimization right now, because that's how the big boys get big in podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
But to tick that box, we're going to need to fill a small section in the middle of the show about anticipation of Hogwarts Legacy. Now, one of the co-hosts of the show, going back in time, is Tom. He had a phrase. He wants to sing the theme tune, write the theme tune. He wants to play the game. He wants to live the game. And now I see this section as how we live the game. Now, Tom, one of the older co-hosts of the show, if he was playing Red Dead Redemption, he got so into the game, he'd go out and buy like horse rugs to drape on his sofa. He would sit and play it in a Stetson. He would drink whiskey shots whenever his character drank whiskey shots at the bar. He kind of sat on his gamer chair like he was sat astride a horse. This man likes to live the game, breathe the game, and be the game. Now, I kind of identify with that. I think we touched on it through the show. But what I'm going to do to get ready for Hogwarts Legacy is I'm going to break out all my Harry Potter merch.
You have a lot.
My kids have quite a bit. Like I've got some screen accurate wands I can lay my hands on quite quickly. I've actually got a Hogwarts screen accurate school gown I could throw on. And round here, barn owls are 10 a penny. I feel like I could drag in a screaming barn owl within 20 minutes and have it kind of gaffer taped to my mantelpiece in the game room. No questions. I don't like birds. I'll be honest with you. It's one of the biggest fears.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Birds is the biggest fear.
I don't mind them at a distance, but if I get one of those feathers whipped across my face in anger, I literally will go like rigid straight, probably collapse on the floor. I'm done. I don't like it. And this is a guy who, to earn money as a teenager, had to work in a chicken farm. This was one of the most hardest fought money I've ever earned in my life. And every single game I bought with that money felt like I was literally giving away part of my soul. Other than that, I'm going to hopefully, in a more realistic fashion, I'm going to clear down some of the games that I've been scooting around with this week, clear out the chaff, so I can concentrate solely on Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts Legacy, Hogwarts Legacy. You get paid to say Blinks or what? No, Furkay.
Furkay.
Hogwarts Legacy right now, baby.
Okay. Yeah, you got to get those checks, man. You got to get them.
And I may even go as far as trying to obtain some chocolate. Now, I've got some chocolate frog boxes around the house with some of the wizarding cards in, you know, the ones that move. I'm thinking I could throw some of those around and then go to a local supermarket and get some generic chocolate animals that kind of loosely fit in the box. I'm going to get some jelly beans and pretend they're Bertie Bung's every flavor bean.
I'm impressed with your knowledge right now.
Well, you know, I did go to Hogwarts.
Don't kid me not, because I would be so jealous right now. I'm like, I'd be so jealous.
But and I've also got some Hogsmeade butterbeer tankards that I could wheel in. Now, I could fill those with milk, or I could try and recreate that butterbeer recipe off of online, which I might do. Butterscotch and milk, I think I'll do it. Boom. That's my extensive efforts to make my area as Harry Potter themed as possible. Might light a couple of candles, actually. And I've got some big old books around, like the works of Shakespeare and stuff, because they look cool on shelves. If I arrange them around me while I'm playing, it could feel like spell books. I feel like I'm going to give the most, actually, in my Halloween decoration box upstairs, I've got like skulls in bell jars and things like that. I'm going to bring a couple of them down. Seb, how themed does my environment seem to you right now?
It seems like you're spending $300 on a game that you might or may not love. And I fear for you, because if you do put this sizable investment in, and
I've got all this stuff.
Okay. So I heard you had to go to the store to get the chocolate. So I at least thought maybe you had to buy some of this. But all right, so
I think the main cash element for me is going to be the fine to the RSPB, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, who are going to yang me up the yin yang for duct taping a healthy barn owl to my mantelpiece. I think that's where the danger of the monetary creep comes in.
That's kind of on you for getting caught, though. You know,
it's fine as long as you don't get caught.
I was like, that's kind of on you for getting caught.
I've just confessed it on a podcast. I'm kind of done, really.
No. They get it. You know, they get it. You know, you're just creating the ambiance. You know, it's until you actually do the actions, and that's when their hands are tied. They're like, hey, we got undeniable proof. But like right now, it's just all happenstance. So, you know, this is hypothetical speak, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Until you
quiet down there.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta, like, did you grow up and watch those like Tootsie Pop commercials where the owl was just like, how many licks does it take to get to the center? No?
Is that an advert aimed at children?
I think so, yeah. When it was
it's got a little bit of in my adult brain, that's got a little bit of a dark undercurrent to it.
Really now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like in the UK, and I think in America, kids are lured into vans for inappropriate reasons through sweets.
Oh yeah, that's true. That is true.
Get a kid in the back of a van, give it a Tootsie Pop. How many licks till you get to the center? Now think about that advertising slogan. It's a little bit edgy.
I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know no kid that's gonna get into a van for a Tootsie Pop. I'm like, you're gonna.
How did you get all the kids in the cellar to do our statistician work? How did you lure them down there?
At least kid size Snickers, man. You gotta up the ante. You can't just give them a Tootsie Pop. The kids today don't know what Tootsie Pops mean. They don't know any of that. I'm like, that's like Dum Dums. So I'm like, kids will look at that and get like, get that out of here. That we don't know anything about that. Reese's Pieces, Skittles, like, and king size Snickers. That kids need something like that, and Fortnite V-Bucks. That's how you lure in kids.
V-Bucks is how you get them in.
That's how you get them in right there. That's how you get them in. By the way, full disclosure, we are not complacent and we're not recommending any crimes right now. We are not that kind of podcast where we are condoning these actions, nor are we trying to give you a blueprint to how to kidnap children. That said, going back,
it would be a really effective way to do it, though.
V-Bucks. I'm telling you. Telling you.
Okay. How are you prepping for Hogwarts Legacy on a
I'm just gonna play some of the classic like Harry Potter theme music. I'm clearing out some space. I saw how like big the game is actually gonna be. I'm cleaning out some space on. I think I'm gonna play this on PS5. So I'm clearing out some space on that bad boy, and then other than that, it's just anticipation, because like there's a pit in my stomach to where I'm like, I want this game to be good so bad, but there's also that pit that like screams at me to like telling me, calm down, Sebastian. This is like, use your logic here and like neutralize that anticipation for this game, because like I want this to be good, but like I'm looking at the studio's pedigree. The only thing they've done in their whole history is like the Cars video games. And I'm not talking about like Forza Horizon. I'm talking about like Cars, Lightning McQueen kind of like video games. And then they've done the Skylander series. So I'm like, they haven't done anything worthy of pedigree. This is their first major game, so to speak. Like, I'm looking at that. And then I'm also thinking to myself, I'm like, Harry Potter games on Metacritic or on OpenCritic have never scored above like a 76. Like, no Harry Potter game has broken that.
That's where I see this pitching in.
At 70s, yeah, I can see that easily. Easy money. So I'm like, I want this to be the Harry Potter to what Batman like Batman the Arkham Asylum games were to that Batman IP and Batman video games.
That
I
would
want
be
this
the most ideal situation they could find themselves in, I think.
Yeah, I want this to be that, but everything in me is screaming like, "Hey, this is going to be a 7 out of 10 ass video game." Like everything in me is screaming that right now. How do you
I
feel about
find it,
this?
yeah, I agree. I mean, I'll be happily excited if it got more than that. If outside of the Harry Potter tap that bejewels this game, underneath it, if there was a game loop that was actually really good, I think that would work in its benefit. I think it's very easy to create a game with this much legacy of historic written content and film content where you could literally sprinkle that on a turd and put it out there and it's going to sell gangbuster numbers. But I think for the legitimacy of the franchise and this game and the developer itself, it needs to be better than just that. It needs to be better than the sum of its parts. It needs to be underneath it all a really great game experience. The controls need to be tactile. They need to be rewarding. It needs to feel good to cast a spell. It needs to feel good to go to your common room at night. I'm also a little bit disturbed about the storyline of it. I would much rather have seen a Hogwarts Legacy game broken into 2 sections, years 1 to 3. You turn up, you're a kid born to 2 muggles, so you don't know anything about magic. You go and everything, and through that medium, we get reintroduced to everything Harry Potter because this kid doesn't know anything. So if you've picked this game up, you don't know anything. You get everything explained to you about the Harry Potter universe. You also then in years 1 to 3, it's all a little kiddie. You're learning how to use the spells. You have to go to the lessons. It's all very basic stuff. And you're all like trying to do the bits to get the house points because that's what matters to the young kids. Then I would want to see it transition from 4 to leaving school as being some of those more sort of creepy things around the Hogwarts itself start opening up and you can start exploring them. You can maybe get narrative threads in years 1 to 3 that lead you to the doors opening up in year 4 and maybe earlier if you can work it out. But some of that stuff being walled off and you really being drilled in the basics of magic. The fact that Quidditch isn't in it reeks of DLC in 6 months' time, but that's just my worn gamer attitude towards that. They've made it very clear it's not in it, and everyone's like, "Oh, why wouldn't it be in it?" Oh, the head teacher's banned it. Okay, so post game release, if he's a bit of a nader-well and he's done, are you going to release it? I think it would have been good to have had it there from the start. So that's my dream Harry Potter game. What we're getting is someone joining in year 5, which is unheard of. Yeah. Coming in, learning all the spells, being all good at it, being immediately so deep in the magical lore that they're opening up the Chamber of Secrets and other things, which, you know, in the lore of Harry Potter haven't been opened or have been hidden. So I don't know. I think that it saddles this strange place between making Harry Potter fans happy and sad, depending on what the content comes with. And it's in this really weird place between making gamers happy and sad. And in between those two people, there's a Harry Potter gamer fan that's big into what this game could be. And they're going to be the main attraction here, Seb. And if you can't make them, I see you fitting into that, actually. You're a gamer that's experiencing gaming mechanics and knows a good game from a bad game. You're also insane about Harry Potter to the point where you're wearing a Harry Potter hoodie right now. Mm-hmm. You talk to me about what you're doing to get ready. I would say you're doing that right now. Your Harry Potter hype train left the station about 6 weeks ago, and you've been on this Harry Potter bandwagon for some time. Have you watched the films recently in anticipation of this?
I usually read the books once a year, so I usually do that once a year. I just had my read-throughs around November of all 7 books, so I'm on the films. I might watch one every once in a while. Like it has to be one of those things to where like I see it in the background or something, or I play it in the background. It's not something I actively go out and like hunt for because like I'm not the biggest Harry Potter movie person, more so than I am the book person.
Do you think and that's the danger for for Hogwarts Legacy is, I think the vast majority of people now tie in Harry Potter to the HPCU rather than the book originals. And this game's going to have to. There's lots of unseen things in the books that never made it to the movies, and that's going to help fill the quiet areas of Hogwarts. But unless they nail some of these film parts absolutely bang on, a lot of people aren't really going to know what's going on.
No, like you gave your pitch for Harry Potter, and I think it's a really good one. I also think it's like it sounds like it's almost two different games to where like the first game sounds like it'd be year 1 through 3, and then the second game seems like it'd be like year 4 through 7.
I think
or
1
like
to
above.
3, I see it as being the real Hogwarts simulator where you go to school like Bully and you learn the things, and this is what helps you progress in the games. But then a darker element starts descending towards the end of year 3. And that's really where the deeper story roots grab you and pull you through to your newts and beyond.
Yeah, I understand that. I would if I'm looking forward to Hogwarts Legacy a lot, but I'm also like I said, I'm reserved. I'm kind of like everything about it seems like it's almost like I don't know if all the sums are going to equal up to be like a whole that is going to be not only appetizing to people, but also like something that fans are going to really gravitate to outside of like 2 or 3 weeks playthrough. And that scares me. And then the fact that like the story doesn't seem like it's going to be like this over the top like story that people are just going to just love and soak up. And, like a lot of this is about the Goblin Rebellion, and like not knowing nothing against like the Goblin Rebellions here, but like even in the main storyline of Harry, like the Goblin Rebellions were always something they slept through in history class, and like that was something Professor Binns was always teaching about. And they like besides Hermione, most of the students were either bored out of their minds or they slept through it. And now we have a game centered around the Goblin Rebellion,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, you're already kind of starting off on a weird foot, even canonically speaking, in the Harry Potter universe by having that being your primary focus. But like, I don't necessarily know how the game is going to like play out. As I want this to be good, but I think one of my things that I would want for the game going forward and want for like the Harry Potter universe going forward is if they took a swing at like a genre that's already established and just made a Harry Potter version of it, or maybe like a Harry Potter world centric version of it. Can you imagine what this game or what a game would look like if it had all the nuances and all the like gameplay elements of like maybe Hogwarts Legacy, but if it was a Souls game, like to where like you're tasked with like being a dark wizard hunter, or like tasked with like trying to take down Grindelwald, and you're like you have to take down his bases, you have to take down like the different camps around like around Europe, or like you have to take down like different like fantastic beasts around like all the world and such like that. So you're hunting different ones.
I actually think that something outside of Hogwarts, but within the Harry Potter universe, would have given someone way more free reign to do.
Oh yeah,
and to that tune, a Fantastic Beasts video game would have given it a world stage. It would have given it variety. It would have given it gameplay tropes, i.e., here's a new boss stroke fantastic creature. How are you going to get it in your suitcase sort of job? And, maybe that plays out in a Ghostbusters video game style way where you try and pull them down into the trap, aka the suitcase, whatever it is. I don't know what the gameplay tropes are, but I agree with you. They've kind of fenced themselves into what do people love about Harry Potter? Oh, it's Hogwarts. Is it?
No, I think it's the lore more so than it is just the centralized location of Hogwarts. Like we love
to the broader demographic of people that have dipped into 1 or 2 movies. There's people like you are mega fans, and there's people that me that are like casually interested in it, maybe more than casually interested in it. But then you've got the other people that kind of maybe saw a couple of films as kids. Are they the main demographic here that's going to turn up and pay the money? And as long as they're happy, is everything good? And these people don't probably tend to read reviews. They're just going to see Harry Potter and be like, babe, the Harry Potter game's out. I'm bringing it home tonight. I'm going to shopping. Seen it in Walmart. Oh, great. Yeah, bring it home. Play a couple of games, eat a couple of chocolate frogs. They never get past the tutorial. Job done.
Yeah, I like you mentioned kids, and kids to me are like the hardest demographic right now to break into because like you're competing with Minecraft, you're competing against Fortnite, you're competing with like everything under the sun that like has like this entrenched hold on kids right now, and like so this to me like I'm sure kids there are going to be kids who plays this game, but this to me like screams a game just for Harry Potter fans or fans of like RPGs, like open world RPGs. Like I don't quite see like you have kids and I don't, so you have a completely different like viewpoint here that I could be completely off base with. But like I don't see a whole lot of kids going out of their way to not play Fortnite in order to play this game. You know what I
No,
mean?
and do you know what? I see that endemic. My son's got access to an Xbox with Games Pass. Started playing Hi-Fi Rush, sacked it off, went back to Fortnite.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like with a certain generation at the moment, no other game, no matter how good it is, can get the time in front of their eyeballs to get them sucked into the controls, the rhythm, and also to appreciate something outside of that. And I'm sort of concerned in a way, we've touched on it on other episodes, about how these games are morphing the kind of games that we're getting hold of. Like Suicide Squad has to be online. Why? Oh, wait, it just kind of does. Gotham Knights, oh, it's online. Why? Oh, it just have to does. We've both identified reasons within both of those games where it actually performed better if it was just a single player experience. Now, me and you are very single player experience focused. We're very sort of stubborn in our mindset of that's the sort of game that we want. Now, I know that there's probably, you could line up a million kids outside who say that that sort of game is boring to them. Now, I don't know as they mature whether their tastes will change or whether they've matured in this ecosystem and all they want from gaming is basically Fortnite clones. I don't know, but it does pose this concern to me that a game that should be perfectly in their wheelhouse, a la Hogwarts Legacy or Hi-Fi, aren't really getting the time to penetrate the kid's mind space because I need to get that skin. I need to get that battle pass. I need to get this. Oh, mate, he's on. He's cool. I want to fit in with him. We're going to play Fortnite all night, even though I don't really want to. Like what? I don't know what's going on there. And I don't know what that means for gaming in general, but I'm concerned as to that attention span not really delivering for Hogwarts again. My kids love Harry Potter, but to the point where they're going to play a 60-hour open world RPG. I don't see it,
Yeah.
Seb.
No. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, like games as a service, though, are like it's feast or famine right now, and a lot of them aren't feasting. You know, we just had Marvel's Avengers like die, and it had a slow death. But like you look at Rumbleverse, which is shutting down its servers, and that's a fairly recent game that kind of like fairly recent game that's a Fortnite clone. Like I hate it or love it, that's what it is. It's a Fortnite, like it's a pro wrestling version of Fortnite. Then you had Knockout City, which is a dodgeball version of Fortnite.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing even those games in that genre, in that like games as a service, in that Fortnite clone kind of genre, they can't even break through the mold right now. So it is. I don't necessarily know if it's like I can't blame Hogwarts if it didn't like break through the Fortnite mode, whereas like games that are like built and tailored to actually do that, like Marvel's Avengers, like Knockout City, like Rumbleverse, are actually getting their teeth kicked in right now, and shutting down their servers. But like you said, like we were alluding to, though, I don't think Hogwarts Legacy is going to be primarily for kids for them. It's not necessarily talking about the ratings. I don't think the mass people who are interested in this game are going to be kids. I think it's probably going to be like adults like you and I are also like just massive Harry Potter fans who are casual gamers. And I think that's where the bread and butter is going to be for them. Now, how they feel about this game, all in all, is going to be the true tide and tail, because I think like core gamers might have a problem with some of the mechanics, whereas a casual gamer might just be like, it's Harry Potter. I'm having fun. That user experience is going to be the true tale of the tape with this game.
Okay. Well, I heard what can only be described as a port key dematerializing at the bottom of the drive. Unless you tell me otherwise, Seb, I feel it's time to see if Stingray's around.
Yeah. Before we continue, though, I gotta say I'm impressed with your Harry Potter knowledge here because you're dropping some dimes here. Portkey, Expelliarmus. Like you're not just throwing out casual terms here. Yeah, I feel like you read a book here or there.
I've read them all.
Oh, have you now?
Not as
Have
many
you?
times as you, but certainly when they came out, and then I was got to the point where I was concurrent release to release from about Azkaban onwards. So I retrospectively read 1, 2, and 3 before I'd even seen a film. I'll be honest, and then did 4, 5, and 6, and very happy with the books. They're a little bit padded out towards the end, but I know there's a lot to wrap up. They're not perfect books in any way, but they're clean, easy reads that actually reward a reread at times, just to see how it all fitted together and actually quite what a universe was created before even one pen was put to paper, which I actually think works in its credit. And to that regard, if J.K. Rowling's only ever known for one work, I know she's tried to write other titles, but if she's only ever known for one work, it's this, and it's the best-selling book of all time, outselling even the Bible, which has had from the year one to get its traction. And this has only really been around since the year 1996 of our Lord. So, it's a relative blink of an eye in terms of fiction, but it's done really well, and a multi-billion pound franchise swinging off the back of it that love it or hate it seems to be cashing in every which way. I think we said off air, and I might have said it on air, I forget now, but I feel like as far as the time to release a Hogwarts game goes, this really isn't that time.
It doesn't feel like it. It really does.
There's no film to swing off, and we've all kind of left Harry Potter behind, and it's a bit of a Christmas memory these days. It's not. When Harry Potter was massive, you'd walk into any local newsagents here, there'd be a magazine, a sweet, a lollipop. You could get the clothes at the local at the store. There was Harry Potter dress-up kits. There was all of it. That's all gone. And now they're releasing a game and hoping. Just think how much this could have done, even if it was a below-average game 10 years ago.
Oh, it would have done bank.
It would have done, and it literally could have been a dog poo.
Yeah, it would have done bank. I have a couple of questions here. You can answer them rapid fire question, or you can go into detail on them. But Harry Potter like Hogwarts Legacy questions here. What house are you going to be in on the game?
I want to be in Slytherin, if I'm honest with you.
Okay. I'm gonna be in Hufflepuff. All right. So, let's see. Are you gonna play as a dark wizard or a light wizard?
You see, I don't know about that. I might do a little bit of. I don't want to spoil it for myself, but it kind of depends what routes that opens up for you. If it means that I'm basically like a snotty-nosed version of Malfoy, and I've got a couple of people around me, I'm probably going to avoid going the Slytherin route and probably go down like a Ravenclaw or a Gryffindor route and try and be a good guy, and play it nice and clean. But it just like there's something about the appeal of the Slytherin. It's the old magic. It's like the more historic families. It's the sort of air towards a little bit of a dark edge, I suppose, that kind of intrigues me. But what am I talking about? I normally get into these games and play them as the kind of person that I am, and therefore I'll be Gryffindor all the way, doing all the right things and never once uttering a deadly curse.
Okay. So on that note, does it bother you that Hogwarts Legacy won't feature a morality system, like a good or bad morality system?
Yeah, to me,
it does me.
That's a concern. Like, how can you be in Slytherin and then if you're going to role play it and it's a role playing game, the very genesis of that in my mind means very much like I've set my gaming area up with all the stuff to help me role play. If I'm in that game and want to be dastardly and I don't get punished or rewarded for that, why even give people the choice to join Slytherin? Why not just make it a linear experience where you're in one of the other houses that's not really had the screen time in the films?
Yeah, I mean, even more so, not even just talking about Slytherin, but like the fact that you can use unforgivable curses, like you can kill someone, you can torture someone, you can use Imperius to like completely control their minds and everything like that. And there's no penalty for doing such. It's like I feel like that's a huge misstep,
which is universe breaking as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, because I'm like, even in Grand Theft Auto, there's punishments for doing those type of crimes.
Yes.
And in this game, you get away scot-free and like no one blinks an eye about it. It's to me like, I don't. How do you build lore in a universe and you don't have
what I'm intrigued to see about the game is, do I wake up in the morning and go down to the Great Hall and have myself a breakfast of whatever I fancy? Or is it more snapshot than that? Is it just suddenly there's a cutscene and then we're half a term in and I'm in the middle of a potions lesson, or I'm in the middle of a, what? I don't know. It sounds to me a bit like a Ubisoft take. Like, here's a broom because we know you want to fly around everywhere. Here's this, here's that, here's the other. Here's all the boxes ticked. At the minute, I'm quite concerned about how the narrative is going to form within an open world RPG, and whether an open world RPG lends itself to this game if they're not going to do the morality system. Does an open world RPG lend itself to this game other than finding collectibles? In which case, it's pretty much the original Harry Potter game on PlayStation 1 or Spyro. What game are we actually going to get? Because if it's a collect 'em up with, we've got to find all the wizarding cards in the chocolate frogs, and there's one located in the back of a tree in a hollow round the back of a centaur's house that you can only find if you've got this certain spell at the end game where you fly up in the air and you can grab it, or if you've managed to get the Nimbus 2000 at this point, which shouldn't be in the game from the timeline, but it's a piece of DLC you get with the exclusive Amazon PS5 Deluxe Upgrade Edition. I don't know. I'm very nervous. Probably more nervous about this game because than any game really that's attached to a franchise at the minute, because it kind of spells make or break of the Hogwarts game universe, or the Wizarding World gaming universe in its hand. And if it screams out that it's a bit poo pants, or as you would call it, mid, if it's lower tier mid, this game is done.
Yeah. Word of mouth is really going to be a make or break component of Hogwarts Legacy. And we talked about this earlier, or we'll get to this in a second when we talk about Stingray's boots. This is the perfect game to come out right now because there's nothing else on the horizon for maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
And the boot, I don't know whether other developers looked at Hogwarts and were like, even if it's garbage, it's going to do gangbusters. If we come out the same day against its advertising might, no one's even going to know we exist.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives Hogwarts Legacy a tentpole week all to itself, pretty much, where it can do what it needs to do. If it does gangbusters, I can see other delays happening, because if it's an amazing game and people just can't get enough of it and word of mouth goes nuts, other games are going to really struggle to break that stranglehold.
I don't know if it'll hit that plateau, because I'm like, it would have to be Elden Ring at that point, for other people to be like, we gotta get away from the tailspin of that. But I don't think they have to worry about that. And not to mention, like, I don't think anything is coming out in February that is like rivaling it as far as like the same demographic, because you do have PlayStation VR, you have Like a Dragon, Ishin, you have Kirby Return to Dreamland Deluxe and Octopath 2. Other than that, like, we're into March territory, and that's a whole month you have to yourself, so to speak.
Let's hope it needs it.
Yeah, let's hope it's also good, because if it's bad, that's a dead month at that point.
It's back to the backlog again, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. But I just wanted to get your read on a couple of things, because I feel like viewers would want to know, like, what are you going to be doing in Hogwarts? Like, you as a person, So I'm
in
glad
the game.
Yeah, in the game. So I'm glad you
again, it depends what kind of game it is. If it's getting up in the morning and going down to the Great Hall and having a little bit of chit chat with my school friends, and then, we've got to get to potions, and then we rush to potions and we do potions, or we get the option to skive off and we go to the gamekeeper's lodge, or we go muck around in the forest with the spiders, or whatever it is, then again, the morality scheme would play into that being like, you get caught, you're in trouble, you got to do detentions, you've got the words on your arm with all the blood and all that. That would be really cool, Seb. Something tells me that ain't going to happen.
I don't think so. I think a lot of people are going to find out that this is a Harry Potter Ubisoft like game, and
I
think
feel
that,
like potions is going to be a symbol on the map, and there might be a day or night cycle. There might not even not be, and you can walk around and do what you want, no penalty. And when you want to advance the story, you go to the potions lesson. Even if you've been at Hogwarts at that point for 6 years, getting all the collectibles first. It's like, oh, welcome in for the first time. Here you go, sit down. We're going to do potions. And it's basically a dancing mini game, just like Bully. Up, down, left, and right. Poof. Oh, you've blown a potion up. Harry, stand in. Do it again. And then you're going to go out and you can go do all the open world stuff for hours and hours and hours again. And then you go to the next lesson, which is whatever that is. And you arrive and it's like, oh, you're a little late after potions. Yeah. What, 6 weeks?
Yeah, for sure.
And you don't even really care that much. And I've done despicable curses here. I've done this. I've done that. I've done the other. I've set the place on fire. I've killed a centaur. I've killed a spider. I've done all this terrible stuff. I've basically flown around on my broom. I've gone and drank butterbeer. I've had the time of my life in a very small space of time between potions and now. This is what's concerning me about it. And how I would like to live is get up in the morning, look at my timetable, pull it out in your book. It's all written in ink, just as it would be if you'd written it down yourself from the board. And you go to potions and there's a clock and it counts down. You do an hour in there, then you have a little break, and then you go do an hour in another one. And you do all this until nighttime. And you've got a little bit of homework to do. And then you get this small time, which makes the open world really precious because you get the tiniest amount of time to play in it. And that's when you go and find your collectibles. That's when you go and talk to the centaur. That's when you go to the gamekeeper. That's when you go into Hogsmeade and mess about. That's when you get a train to Diagon Alley and you get yourself a new wand or whatever. That's how I want them to present me this game. But something tells me it's going to be the way I initially said, which is where...
What you're describing reminds me of, you remember Dead Rising?
Yeah.
You remember how it had that internal clock to where, like, if you miss a certain events, you just missed it, like, completely? Like, yeah. It sounds like that would be, like, the system that you'd want in this game, to where, like, regardless of whether or not you show up, that class has already happened.
Now, to me, that carries intrigue and makes that world even more delicious, because you're like, I really enjoyed that potions lesson and I did learn a new thing that's going to help me in the game, but I've got to tie up going to that or opening up the Chamber of Secrets. Now, this is a risk I'm willing to take because I've been working on this all term, but those lessons are really golden content. The voice actor's great. I learned something that might even open the chamber up and I've missed that opportunity to do it. Like, from a game point of view, you're going to have to wait another month before that lesson gets repeated, maybe.
Yeah, it's I would even love a Persona-esque kind of thing, to where, like, they have you on a set schedule or you have to, like, three activities.
That would work better than potentially the open world scenario. Like, Persona, technically, you could argue is open world, but it's not really.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would benefit Hogwarts Legacy from a storytelling point of view.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And would lean more into that school dynamic.
Yeah, and even if you, like, Persona a Hogwarts game up, or like a Harry Potter game up, where you made it turn-based, that game would sell still buku's amount of money, and it would also, like, really help the narrative aspect of the game.
And it would also, I know the casual probably would be a little bit intimidated by a turn-based game initially, but as long as it was done in a way that looked cool, it wouldn't matter if you selected the spell and then 2 turns later executed it, because it's less Twitch gameplay dependent than being able to hammer X quick enough, which might make a casual feel a little bit alienated by the game. So a turn-based Persona type game in a Hogwarts Legacy universe would be absolutely
good.
It would be good, but I feel that it's so niche that it wouldn't be appealing to the people they want to appeal to.
Yeah. So what is coming out in the upcoming weeks, George?
Well, simmer down, because that smell of almost like faint gunpowder, it was actually a portkey. I don't know how he does it, because he exists outside of all time and space, and looks to me, in my interpretation of Ray, that because of Wayne Ray, his son's diminutive size, he's actually being brought in by an owl. It's time for a peek in what we affectionately call Stingray's boot. What's nestled between some counterfeit nappers and a dodgy copy of Battlefriend all this week. These are the new release highlights for February 6th, February the 12th, 2023. Listeners, these are out on digital or physical, or will be by the time this podcast is in your feed, but could be. Way to slip up on that, Ray. I tell you what, you've arrived on a Nimbus 3000, and the protruding end of that broom stopped very close to my crotch area. Nice work, but a little intimidating, if I'm honest. Ray? Oh, that's totally fine, Ray. I will refer to you as your Harry Potter name. What do you think he's just told me his Harry Potter name is, Seb?
Raydonis.
Raydonis.
Mm-hmm.
He actually told me it was Dumble Ray.
Dumble Ray. I like that. I like that. Dumble Ray. I like that.
So Dumble Ray has pulled out a bottomless sack here, the sort of thing Hermione would use. And I've reached into it and I've pulled out, consider it such a massive sack, Ray. There's only 2 things in it. Do you think you've gone overboard with this? Okay, Dumble Ray. Dumble Ray, I am sorry. First game out of the bag, Monster Outbreak on the Switch, February 9th. The King's Dimensional Orb has malfunctioned, bringing hordes of monsters into the kingdom. Defend your safe ground against the monsters by gathering resources, building defenses, upgrading your arsenal, and surviving long enough to find the source of monsters and destroy it. Didn't pick a very good day, really, to come out, did it? Monsters Outbreak on the Switch, February 9th, but there you go. That leaves one more game in Dumble Ray's Sac Magique.
It is a game we've been talking about for a little bit now. It is Hogwarts Legacy. It's coming out for PC, PS5, and the Xbox Series S and X. And before you hit us up in the corrections, we know there is going to be Hogwarts Legacy coming out for like the older generations of consoles, but those come out in a later date later this year. That said, Hogwarts Legacy is an immersive open world RPG. Now you can take control of the action and be at the center of your own adventure in the wizarding world.
Nice work, Ray. We also have to take a retro-themed VHS out of his boot. It's kind of it's a must-do thing these days. And I'm going to reach in and I'm going to pull out. At this point, I don't even know anymore. We've had so much out of there, but maybe I'm going to pick Mary Poppins on white label Disney VHS. Thanks, Ray. You know, before Hogwarts came along, this was the only English-based magic show you could get.
You know, I don't think I've seen Mary Poppins since I was a kid.
It's aged well.
Has it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a better film than that Mary Poppins garbage they popped out, you know, Mary Poppins Revisited for sure. I just did not like that one little bit. So we'll go with that. Set in a quaint version of London. There's magic loosely implied. What more could one want?
Who do you think will win in a fight, Mary Poppins or Matilda?
Oh, Mary Poppins. She'd school Matilda.
You think so?
Yeah. Matilda's a child. She's going to respond to Mary Poppins immediately, like Pavel's dog.
Oh, okay. I was like, Matilda has some powers on her, though.
I know, but Mary Poppins would win her with a heart.
Okay, I can see that.
She would see that Matilda had special talents, acknowledge those, but then also help her sort of embrace. Well, she would turn up at Matilda's home and get her to reform a relationship with her father.
Oh, so she's doing some psychological warfare in this.
Yeah, that's what you don't realize about the Poppins. She's going deep.
Okay. So you who've worked in the chicken coop before, who would win between a frenzied chicken and Mary Poppins?
Oh, mate. Mary Poppins would grab that frenzied chicken, fall backwards through a painting, at which point the chicken would become a friendly animated Disney-esque character who would then be taken out of an aggressive frenzy and become a loving chicken mother, all in a style of a Monet painting.
Okay, I can
while
see that.
riding a carnival horse.
Oh, it gets deeper.
Yeah.
It gets deeper for real. I love how your imagination works. But yeah, I think this week out of the boot, I'm probably going to take out. Let's go with. I'm feeling all the news that happened in the DC world. I'm feeling a little DC-ish, so I'm going to take out like the original Superman movie, a movie that was on VHS, I believe.
What, the Christopher Reeves original?
Yeah, I'm gonna take that out.
That stands up. Do you know what? I know some of the effects are wonky in that, but the story writing and cinematography in that is first class.
It really is. And I'd love to see that same story done in a modern day aesthetic.
Ooh. Wow.
Just to see what it looks like modern day, I think that would be really, really dope.
Well, they kind of did an ode to it, didn't they, in Superman Returns, which was meant to be an homage to those Donner films and technically kind of finish off that series of stories. Which is why I think they tried to get someone who looked as much like
Christopher Reeve as
possible. Yeah.
I wonder what James Gunn is going to do with Superman now that he's announced that there's a new Superman movie coming out. I'm so curious on that.
That DC universe is an absolute car crash.
It really is,
and it's a shame because what Snyder was doing with it initially was really good. And I think if he had been allowed to do the full run and tie every single one of them into his creative vision, I think we'd have something that probably didn't review very well initially versus the bam, smack and popcorn of a Marvel film, but would actually have that slow cinematic sizzle of like, actually, I've seen this a couple of times now, and actually it's got more gravitas to it. But as always, businesses go chasing the dollar. And at the time, bap-smang popcorn movies seem to be working quite well. So that's what we got until the Snyder cut of Avengers. And really, that's what made the mess that is Aquaman. And no disrespect, but Wonder Woman and the sequel are also
mid.
Lower. I'm being generous because you chose the word mid, and I feel that you obviously hold some sort of emotional tie to these films. But I'm going to say lower echelons of mid.
I agree with that. And like my scale is usually like mid is like me being generous of like your 5 to 7 is like you're kind of middling there, and then like everything below that I call bottom feeding.
Okay. Wonder Woman and Aquaman are bottom feeders.
Yeah, I think I would agree on that.
Okay, yeah. Mid is too kind.
Yeah, I agree on that.
But Superman or Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, and then the Snyder Avengers, back to back,
by the way.
Currently, Justice League, sorry, my bad, is amazing.
I'm right there with you, except for Batman versus Superman. I'd actually put that in bottom feeding as well. Come on, man. Do you bleed? We got to do better than that. And then you had like the weird Lex Luthor.
But, depending on how many times you've watched that, when you actually see that all play out at the end and the way like he's controlling a literal god, he's took Superman down to his knees and he's used everyone to do that. He's used Batman, the greatest detective of all, got absolutely rope-a-doped by Luthor at this point. He fell for that hook, line, and sinker. He's then got a literal god on his knees who could just look at him and eviscerate him with the lasers. But Luthor's 2 steps ahead. He knows that he can't do that. That's the end of seeing Mummy again. Simple as that. And he's literally taken this god on earth who everyone was talking about, what can we do to stop Superman? He's got all these powers. If he ever turned evil, blah, 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 blah. He's controlling him like a puppet.
It sounds like we need to have a deep dive episode dedicated to the DC EU.
Like I say, change is coming. There may be a show within the UCP Productions banner that enables us to explore that while also keeping game content exactly where it needs to be.
Yeah, for sure. Be on the lookout, everyone, because that is going to be a fine, good show coming on the horizon.
Look quite far down the horizon because it could be about a year away, but it's happening.
It's happening sooner or later. We'll get to it, everyone.
With that, I turn around and there's nothing but what looks like a diminutive chocolate frog with the card of Wayne Ray attached to its neck. I'm going to be in two minds whether to eat that because I'm either tucking into Wayne Ray or I'm tucking into a fine chocolate delicatessen here.
Is that you slurping up a frog?
It would. To be fair, mate, it actually transpired it was Wayne Ray. I've just bit his head clean off. So we'll see how the story stitches him back together next week. With all that said and done, Ray's gone. We've picked our games. I've murdered Ray's son, probably for the second time on air. My apologies, Wayne. It's time for me to ask you what you're hoping to play.
Before we record, probably Hogwarts Legacy again. I like Hogwarts Legacy. I'll probably dive into that. See if it does live up to the hype. See if it does like hit our anticipation levels, or if it is a steaming disappointment.
Where I'm at with that right now, to use your phrase, if it was mid, I'd consider that a success.
I understand. I understand how you feel about that one.
It's okay. Fine. That'll do. Delete. Save it for a rainy day. It might be that. I don't know, but we'll see. Anything else?
That's about it. Like, other than that, it's just a couple of things for review coming up that will probably be a couple of discussions we'll have in future episodes.
Awesome. Okay. For me, a little bit more Death Stranding Director's Cut. I don't know why, but I've never played Forbidden West on PS4, and I don't know why, but I feel almost compelled to like play it through again.
I'm asking why as a curiosity, but are you just going to go in there, like pop on the PS4 version and immediately pop all the trophies because you play the PS5 version?
It doesn't work that way, does it? If you do the PS4, it'll pop the PS5, but if you do the PS5, it won't pop the PS4.
Oh, okay. Because I think I did this for Miles Morales, where I popped the PS4 versions of all those trophies, but I digress. It might not work.
I'm just intrigued to. So it's a game that came out literally a year ago to this point, and I loved every single second of it. And I would quite like to play it through again. You can't have a PS5 in every room and house, can you? So some of them you have to have a PS4 Pro in, and I could either stream it from the PS5, which there's varying degrees of success. It works for games like Grand Prix Manager, but it doesn't really work for PS5 only games. And probably a little bit more Mass Effect. And then really, I'm just going to keep working through some of the long-term projects like Ghost of Tsushima and just try and clear the decks down, because Hogwarts Legacy, I know it got delayed, but Star Wars is around the corner. We've got VR at the end of the month. It's like this year's starting to pick up. And if you don't get on the bandwagon, you get off the bandwagon. And sadly, in the gaming podcast, you can't sit and enjoy the landscape sometimes. You've just got to bury your foot in the carpet and get it to the completion, which sometimes I enjoy the need to get through a game, and the podcast is certainly a drive for that. Sometimes I just want to sit and enjoy the view,
Depends on the game for me, but yeah, like you said, I have a couple right now that I'm like mowing through, but I love when I'm playing of it. And I think playing in short stints kind of helps a little bit because it keeps fresh in my mind. And I'm like, I experienced that journey versus like watching a movie to where it took me like 5 sits to finish that movie completely. Mm-hmm. It just kind of depends. I think if you have something narratively that's like narratively heavy, I think it's better to just eat it all in one sitting.
And that's, I love it when I get the time to be able to dedicate to shut the door, lights off, graphic enhancers on, as Tom used to say, with the lamps in the room, make the graphics look as good as you can on the TV screen. Bring in enough snacks and drink to get you through a 12-hour period. Maybe catheterize yourself up a little bit so you don't have to move, and then just lose yourself in the universe. And to me, that's my primary way of playing. That's probably why I'm a single player kind of guy, because I just want to live and breathe in that. And as the things happen to the lead character, I want to feel the feelings that they're feeling as they happen to me simultaneously at the same time, vicariously through the screen. So yeah, I love that style of playing. So to me, to sit down and live in a world and absorb the narrative is the pinnacle of gaming to me.
I'm right there with you. I'll probably play through Horizon closer to the DLC later this year, and that way I kind of have it fresh in my mind, like right before that playthrough.
I'm actually really excited for that.
I am too. The Burning Shores DLC.
Yeah.
Are you more excited for that or Call of the Mountain, the VR experience? I had to put you on the spot here.
Because I've tried to get my head out of all PSVR 2 news. I don't want to know any of the technical specs. I don't really want to know about other foveated rendering for the eyewear. I don't want to know any of it. I just want to put it on day one and experience it and see for my own eyes. You know, my dream for PSVR 2 is I put it on, and I'm not saying I want it to be real life, but you know, PSVR 1 had screen borders where you could see the sides of the headpiece. And you know, outside of the central area, some of it was a little bit pixelated at times, depending on the game developer and other bits and bobs. But I want to be able to put that on and there'd be no borders to it, like literally be able to move my eyes around in an environment and within reason, I know it's a game, but feel like I'm in that physical space. That to me will be how PSVR 2 wins. To that end, initially I'm very excited about Call of the Mountain. I did curiosity did get the better of me, and I did end up reading the preview, which left me with some
trepidations here and there.
Interesting questions. I wouldn't say trepidation, but everything was sounding great until they started describing the combat, and then I was like, oh, okay. But I guess, I mean, I talked about it a few weeks ago. When you're deep in a multi creature fight in Horizon or its sequel, you don't really see a lot. You're just kind of scanning that thing around and banging arrows off at anything that's neon. That would be a vomit comet in VR.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Literally. So maybe they're slightly more pared down way of doing the combat, and the quick moves between sort of critical strike zones actually is probably going to work out really cool and give you that feeling without feeling like you're looking at the ceiling, you're looking at the floor, you're spinning around and you don't know what day it is. So initially I'm very excited for that. But I think the long-term payoff for Horizon is going to be that DLC, because for me, invested in the story of 1 and 2 and the interceding DLC, Frozen Pancake
Wilds.
At this point, because I get the name wrong every week, it's actually got me. People say, oh, the story's all over the place. Well, no, not really. It's quite clear and concise. And now we're in that DLC, should be the end game of, you know, really what was played out and teased at the end of 2. Or at least the preparation for that, without giving too many spoilers away. So I'm also excited for that, but one hurdle at a time. Once I've cleared the VR hurdle and find out that's garbage, that can go in the bin and get excited for the flat screen version. Yeah. So and that's it. That's me there. So I think we should draw a close to this rather SEO optimized episode under the guise of a normal episode. But that's how we do things now. That's all we have time for this week, listeners. Always thank you for your time. We look forward to the pleasure of speaking to you again next week. Until then, happy gaming. Remember, there's nothing wrong with being given the unofficial control. It's what you do that counts. See you later, Seb.
Bye.